Welcome, brave souls, to a journey through the darkest corners of Canada. A land of breathtaking landscapes, bustling cities, and hidden shadows. Tonight, we will venture beyond the ordinary, exploring 25 of the most haunted locations across the country. From abandoned asylums to historic hotels, from lonely lake shores to mysterious islands, these sites are steeped in stories that chill the bone and linger in the mind. Prepare yourself as we walk among the restless spirits of Canada, uncovering the tales that refuse to stay buried. The Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel, nestled in the heart of Alberta's Rocky Mountains, is a striking landmark, often called the Castle in the Rockies, for its grand architecture and timeless elegance. Visitors come from around the world to experience its luxurious accommodations, sprawling grounds, and breathtaking mountain views. Yet behind its polished halls and opulent ballrooms, the hotel holds a darker reputation. For over a century, the Banff Springs Hotel has been a hub of unexplained phenomena, where countless spirits are said to wander, reliving moments of joy, tragedy, or unfinished business. Guests and staff alike report eerie encounters, from ghostly apparitions to mysterious sounds, creating a sense that the building itself remembers every story it has ever housed. One of the most famous spirits is the bride who fell down the grand staircase. According to legend, she had been married in the hotel chapel, but tragically slipped and died on the marble steps, her white gown trailing behind her. Guests in rooms overlooking the staircase often claim to see her apparition, delicate and sorrowful, descending the steps as though walking toward an unseen audience. Some have reported a chill in the air, accompanied by the faint scent of flowers, just before her figure appears. Photographs taken in the hallway sometimes capture blurred forms or faint lights where none should exist, further fueling the story. The bride is said not to harm anyone. Instead, she seems trapped in a loop of her final moments, a spectral reminder of a joyous occasion turned tragic. Children's laughter is another hallmark of the hotel's hauntings. Visitors in seemingly empty rooms have described hearing playful giggles, footsteps running across the floor, and the soft thump of a ball bouncing down the hall. Sometimes the sound comes from a room where no one is staying, or from the hallway outside, vanishing the moment one investigates. Staff members have recounted experiences of toys being moved, chairs nudged, or doors opening and closing without explanation. These occurrences are often attributed to the spirits of children who once visited or lived in the area, lingering in the hotel as echoes of innocence and joy. For many guests, the laughter is unsettling yet strangely comforting, a reminder of the hotel's long and vibrant history. Furniture moving on its own is perhaps one of the most unnerving experiences at the Banff Springs. Guests have reported chairs sliding across the floor, tables shifting slightly, and objects disappearing from one room only to reappear in another. Some believe these movements are the spirit's way of interacting with the living, leaving subtle signs of their presence. Staff often hear the creak of floorboards or the drag of heavy objects in empty hallways, particularly late at night when the hotel is quiet. These disturbances are rarely violent, but are enough to leave a lasting impression on anyone who witnesses them. The sense that unseen hands are at work contributes to the hotel's reputation as a place where the veil between worlds is thin. Many of the hotel's hauntings seem tied to its long and storied past. Constructed in 1888 as a railway hotel for the Canadian Pacific Railway, the Banff Springs has hosted countless guests over more than a century. Its grand ballrooms, elegant dining rooms, and ornate corridors have witnessed weddings, celebrations, and tragedies alike. The combination of human activity and the passage of time has, according to legend, imbued the building with a consciousness of its own. Some believe that spirits remain to observe, to warn, or simply to continue the patterns of life they knew in death. Visitors often sense a presence, a subtle shift in temperature, or a glance from the corner of their eye, reinforcing the idea that the hotel remembers and reacts. Encounters are not limited to the bride, children, or furniture. Guests have reported full-body apparitions in hallways, fleeting shadows in stairwells, and whispers that seem to come from nowhere. Some staff members claim to have felt the brush of a hand on their shoulder or a gentle tug on clothing, with no one nearby. Photographs and video recordings occasionally reveal anomalies, translucent shapes, glowing orbs, or indistinct figures. These experiences have been shared in countless stories, articles, and documentaries, contributing to the Banff Springs Hotel's reputation as one of Canada's most haunted locations. For many, the combination of luxury and the supernatural creates a unique atmosphere. The hotel's beauty and comfort make visitors feel at ease. Yet the subtle and sometimes startling paranormal experiences keep them aware of a hidden layer beneath the elegance. Guests often leave with memories, not just of the mountains and the architecture, but of moments when the veil between past and present seemed to dissolve, allowing the spirits of the Banff Springs to emerge and share a fragment of their eternal lives. The Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel stands as a remarkable testament to the intertwining of history, luxury, and the supernatural. From the sorrowful bride on the staircase to the laughter of unseen children and the subtle movements of furniture, the building is alive with stories that refuse to fade. Visitors enter for the scenery, the comfort, and the grandeur. Yet many depart with a lingering sense of having touched something beyond the ordinary, a fleeting glimpse into a world where the past continues to walk among the living. Near the small town of St. Louis, Saskatchewan, there exists an abandoned railway line, shrouded in mystery, whispered about by locals and travelers alike. Known as the St. Louis Ghost Train, this stretch of track has earned a reputation that blends tragedy, folklore, and the unexplainable. By day, the railway is quiet and unremarkable, overgrown with grasses and lined with weathered wooden ties that have long lost their purpose. But as night falls, the air around the tracks seems to change. The wind takes on an eerie quality, carrying distant echoes of a time when trains rumbled along the rails, and the faint scent of smoke from a long-extinguished engine seems to linger. It is then that the stories begin, of lights moving along the track where no train has run in decades, of footsteps echoing in the darkness, and of a spectral presence searching for what was lost. The most commonly reported phenomenon is the mysterious light that travels along the abandoned railway. Many who have witnessed it describe a small, lantern-like glow, moving steadily and deliberately as though guided by a hand unseen. Sometimes the light appears in the distance, bobbing along the tracks in a way that mimics a train's passage. Yet it is far too small and slow to be anything mechanical. On other nights, the light seems to hover above the rails, floating as though suspended by some invisible force, and then vanishes when approached. Witnesses often report a sudden drop in temperature as the light passes, a chill that penetrates clothing and raises the hair on their arms. The eerie glow seems almost sentient, aware of those who watch it and eluding any attempt to get closer. The story behind the St. Louis Ghost Train is as tragic as it is haunting. Local legend claims that the light belongs to a brakeman who was decapitated in a horrific accident along this very line. In the early days of rail travel, he had been responsible for signaling trains along the route, carrying a lantern and performing tasks that demanded precision and attention. One night, while working alone, he was caught in a collision that claimed his life in the most brutal manner, leaving his body behind while his lantern remained. Since that moment, it is said that his spirit has roamed the tracks, lantern in hand, searching for his lost head, unable to rest until it is found. Those who have glimpsed the spectral figure describe a sense of deep sorrow emanating from the light, a yearning that is both poignant and terrifying. The stories speak of a soul bound to the location of his death, replaying the final moments over and over, tethered to the world of the living by the tragedy that ended his life. Witnesses to the ghost train often recount more than just the appearance of the light. Some hear the sound of footsteps crunching over gravel, slow and deliberate, matching the pace of the lantern as it moves along the tracks. Others report hearing distant whistles, like those of an old locomotive, carried faintly on the wind, followed by the metallic clatter of rails as though a train were approaching. Yet, when they strain their eyes or listen more closely, no train emerges, and the sounds fade into silence. Occasionally, the air is filled with whispers, voices that are too faint and fragmented to understand, but suggest communication from another time. It is as if the past reaches out through the night, replaying the moments before the accident, trying to make itself known to anyone willing to bear witness. The surrounding area adds to the ghostly atmosphere. Overgrown brush creeps along the sides of the track, and fallen ties make navigation difficult in the dark. The landscape itself seems to hold memory, the distant hills, the nearby riverbanks, and the empty fields echoing with the footsteps of those who worked and lived here long ago. On foggy nights, the light of the lantern appears to reflect off the mist, creating a surreal, almost dreamlike scene that blurs the line between reality and the supernatural. Many who venture to the tracks after sunset report an overwhelming sense of isolation, as if the living are intruding upon a place that exists between worlds, where the past continues to walk and the dead are aware of their presence. Some visitors have attempted to follow the light along the tracks, driven by curiosity or disbelief. They find themselves disoriented as the lantern moves ahead, always just out of reach. Trails that were familiar in daylight seem to shift, and the distance between themselves and the light never closes. In some cases, people have turned back, unnerved by a sudden chill, the feeling of eyes upon them, or the inexplicable sense that they are being guided away by a force beyond comprehension. Even experienced locals caution that the railway is not just abandoned, it's a place where the living are invited into a narrative that belongs to the dead, a narrative that repeats endlessly over the decades. Stories of the St. Louis ghost train have persisted, passed from generation to generation. Farmers, night travelers, and curious visitors have all contributed their experiences, building a collective lore that is both chilling and compelling. While skeptics attempt to explain the sightings as reflections, passing vehicles, or misidentified animals, the consistency and detail of witness reports suggest that there is something more profound at work. The lantern, the footsteps, the whispers, they are more than coincidence. They are the traces of a life violently ended and a spirit bound to its place of death, forever replaying its final journey along the rails. The St. Louis ghost train remains a destination for those drawn to the paranormal, for those seeking to witness the unexplained firsthand. Whether a visitor is there for adventure, curiosity, or a desire to connect with the past, the railway leaves an impression that is impossible to forget. The glow of the lantern, the sound of phantom footsteps, and the lingering sense of sorrow transform the abandoned tracks into a haunted corridor of history and memory. To see the light, to hear the whispers, or to feel the chill of the brakeman's presence is to step into a story that has endured for decades, a story of tragedy, persistence, and the restless dead. Lake Lanier in Ontario is a place of serene beauty by day, its waters reflecting the dense forests and rolling hills that surround it. The lake is popular with fishermen, campers, and hikers who come to enjoy its quiet shores and abundant wildlife. Yet beneath its placid surface lies a reputation that chills even the most seasoned travelers. For generations, locals have whispered of strange phenomena, unusual lights, and spectral figures that appear when storms rise unexpectedly over the water. These tales speak of a haunting that is as old as the lake itself, a presence that refuses to be ignored. The most enduring legend revolves around ghostly ships that sail the lake during sudden storms. Fishermen and boaters report glimpsing vessels appearing out of nowhere. Their sails are masts, faintly illuminated by lightning or moonlight, moving silently across the waves. Unlike ordinary boats, these spectral ships leave no wake, no sound, and seem almost untouchable. Witnesses often describe them as appearing fully formed, complete with sailors on deck, only to vanish as quickly as they arrived, leaving the water calm once more. Some claim the ships are echoes of vessels lost long ago, condemned to drift across the lake for eternity, their crews trapped in a liminal space between life and death. Alongside the spectral ships are the sailors themselves, often described as shadowy figures or faint outlines moving across the decks. Some eyewitnesses report seeing them perform routine tasks, jesting sails, steering the wheel, or signaling to unseen companions. Others recount more unsettling encounters. sailors pointing toward the shore, staring directly at those watching, or suddenly disappearing in mid-motion. There is a sense that these figures are aware of the living, that they can see and perhaps even communicate in ways that remain indecipherable. Fishermen have told of feeling cold gusts or hearing soft whispers over the water, messages that are too faint to fully understand, yet carry a warning or a plea. The storms themselves seem to awaken the lake's restless spirits. On calm days, Lake Lanier appears peaceful, almost ordinary. But when thunderclouds gather and winds whip across the surface, the lake changes. Waves rise and crash against the shore in unnatural patterns. Fog drifts unnaturally low over the water, and a dense, almost electric tension fills the air. It is during these storms that the ghostly ships appear most often. Boaters describe the water turning dark and heavy, as if the lake itself is alive, and then glimpses of vessels moving through the mist. Lightning flashes illuminate the ships for just a heartbeat, enough to leave a vivid impression burned into memory. Many who witness these apparitions describe an overwhelming sense of awe, mixed with fear, a realization that the natural world and the supernatural are overlapping in a way that cannot be explained. Whispers and warnings carried on the wind are another hallmark of Lake Lanier's haunting. Those on the shore or in small boats have reported hearing voices rise and fall with the waves. Sometimes the messages are clear, a shout of caution, a name called out, but often they are fragmented, unintelligible phrases carried by the wind. The effect is disorienting, as if the lake itself is speaking, or perhaps the spirits of those long drowned are trying to communicate with the living. The wind seems to carry a pattern, guiding listeners' attention toward something unseen, heightening both curiosity and unease. Locals speak of historical tragedies that may have contributed to the lake's supernatural reputation. In centuries past, storms on Lake Lanier could appear suddenly, catching fishermen and travelers unprepared. Ships capsized, lives were lost, and bodies were sometimes never recovered. Some of the haunting is said to be the echo of these disasters, the unresolved energy of those who perished in the water, endlessly retracing their last moments. Others believe the spirits are not malevolent but are instead trapped, unable to leave the lake or move on to whatever lies beyond. The legends have persisted through generations, each new witness adding a layer to the mystery. Lake Lanier's shoreline also holds strange phenomena. On foggy nights, some report seeing figures walking along the beach, their forms barely discernible, disappearing when approached. Lights flicker across the water in ways that do not correspond to stars or distant settlements. Fishermen have returned from trips to find their equipment rearranged or moved in ways they did not do themselves, attributing it to mischievous spirits or lingering souls. Many agree that the lake is a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is thin, a site where the past imprints itself on the present. The haunting is not limited to seasoned adventurers. Casual visitors, campers, and even local children have had encounters that defy explanation. Some describe waking to the sound of splashing outside their cabins when no one else is around. Others report glimpsing a figure on the dock or a light moving across the water, only for it to vanish moments later. These experiences, while fleeting, leave lasting impressions. The combination of visual phenomena, auditory anomalies, and a palpable sense of presence ensures that Lake Lanier remains a place that captivates and unnerves in equal measure. The legends of Lake Lanier endure because they are grounded in both history and observation. The lake itself is a dynamic, sometimes dangerous body of water, and its history is filled with tragedy and mystery. Coupled with the eyewitness reports of ghostly ships, unseen sailors, and whispers on the wind, it creates an atmosphere where the supernatural seems plausible. Visitors often leave with stories that cannot be dismissed, stories of glimpses, chills, and warnings carried across the waves. Lake Lanier is more than a body of water. It is a repository of memory, grief, and unexplained phenomena. The spectral ships, the unseen sailors, the whispering winds, and the sudden, violent storms all serve as reminders that this lake holds secrets far beyond its serene daytime beauty. Those who venture to its shores, especially when darkness falls and storms gather, Enter a space where the past and the present converge, where the living brush against echoes of the dead, and where the unexplained is as real as the water itself. Gros Morne National Park, located on the western edge of Newfoundland, is a place of immense natural beauty, where towering fjords, jagged cliffs, and ancient forests create landscapes both breathtaking and unforgiving. Visitors come to hike its trails, photograph its dramatic scenery, and experience the raw power of the North Atlantic. Yet beneath this awe-inspiring exterior lies a layer of mystery, a realm where the ordinary and the supernatural intermingle. Hikers, campers, and locals have long reported experiences that defy explanation. From echoing footsteps that seem to mimic their own, to shadows that move with a life of their own, to legends of sea spirits who climb ashore in search of warmth and companionship. The park's fjords, carved by glaciers over millennia, rise dramatically from the waters below, creating deep inlets where light and shadow play across stone faces in unsettling ways. As dusk falls, these shadows lengthen and twist, sometimes forming shapes that seem almost human. Hikers traversing the trails often notice movements in the corners of their eyes. Figures stepping silently behind rocks or along narrow ridges, vanishing when directly looked at. Footsteps echo through the forest or along cliffside paths. Yet when hikers stop and listen, they discover they are alone. The phenomenon is so consistent that many have begun to wonder if the park itself is alive, responding to those who venture within it, mirroring their presence, and perhaps even guiding or warning them. Several trails, particularly those near the coastline, are notorious for unusual experiences. Visitors report feeling sudden drops in temperature, a chill that cannot be explained by weather alone, often coinciding with strange auditory phenomena. The sound of water, wind, and wildlife can take on eerie qualities, blending into whispers, soft murmurs, or distant laughter. Some hikers claim to hear their own names called from within the forest, only to find no one nearby. The effect is disorienting, creating a sense that the familiar trails are no longer quite as safe as they appeared during the day. Those who venture further into the park at dusk often describe an overwhelming feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes are tracking every step and every movement. Local folklore adds depth to these unsettling experiences. Indigenous Micmac stories speak of sea spirits, ancient beings who dwell in the waters and occasionally climb ashore. These spirits are said to be drawn to warmth and light, appearing at the edges of cliffs or along the fjords in search of comfort or companionship. Witnesses describe figures emerging from the waves, shimmering and translucent, moving with a grace that no human could achieve. They sometimes appear near campsites or along quiet trails, lingering just long enough to be glimpsed before vanishing into mist or shadow. Observers often report a mixture of awe and unease, sensing that these beings are neither entirely benevolent nor malevolent, but rather entities bound by an ancient connection to the land and sea. The sea spirits are not the only supernatural presences reported within Gros Morne. Shadowy figures are commonly described along the higher trails and cliffs, often appearing to walk independently of natural light or terrain. Some hikers report seeing silhouettes crossing their paths, moving perpendicular to their direction or following behind in impossible ways. Attempts to approach these shadows often prove futile. They recede into rock faces, forests, or fog, leaving no trace of physical presence. For many, these glimpses are accompanied by a sudden feeling of vertigo or imbalance, as if the very cliffs are aware of intruders and react to their presence. In addition to visual phenomena, auditory experiences are frequently reported. Footsteps that mirror a hiker's own pace seem to echo from behind or beside them, following even when no one else is present. In some cases, hikers have reported faint knocks or taps along the trails, as though someone or something is keeping time with their movement. The combination of echoes, whispers, and footsteps creates an unnerving environment where even the bravest feel vulnerable. Campers have awakened to the sound of scratching on tents, the rustle of leaves in areas untouched by wind, or the distant cry of animals in tones that seem human, adding layers to the park's enigmatic reputation. Historical tragedies in the region may help explain some of the park's haunted atmosphere. Explorers, fishermen, and travelers have long risked the cliffs, fjords, and forests, with many losing their lives to falls, storms, or accidents. Stories of lost hikers, drowned fishermen, and vanished explorers are woven into local memory, creating a cultural sense of reverence and caution. Some believe the spirits encountered today are those of individuals who never found rest, bound to the land they loved or feared, replaying moments of their lives endlessly. These lingering presences may account for the repeated patterns of sightings, sounds, and movements reported over decades. Visitors to Gross Marne often describe an uncanny sense of time distortion. A hike that should take an hour may feel like several, with trails appearing longer or curving in unexpected ways. Mist and fog often appear suddenly, reducing visibility and heightening the feeling of isolation. It is during these conditions that the supernatural phenomena become most pronounced. The mirrored footsteps, the floating shadows, and the glimmering figures of sea spirits are most likely to appear when light is low and perception is uncertain. Hikers describe these experiences as surreal, leaving them questioning whether what they saw was real or a trick of the mind. Though many are convinced of the authenticity of what they encountered, the park's combination of natural grandeur and eerie phenomena leaves a lasting impression. Visitors who spend time in Gross Marne often report a mix of wonder and unease, an awareness that the land is alive in ways beyond ordinary comprehension. The towering fjords, ancient forests, and shifting shadows create an environment where the past and present, the natural and the supernatural, converge. Those who walk its trails, especially at dusk, may catch glimpses of lives long gone, of spirits that linger, and of forces tied to the land and sea that defy explanation. To explore Gross Marne National Park is to step into a world where beauty and danger coexist, where every rustle of leaves, every echoing step, and every shifting shadow carries the possibility of something beyond the ordinary. From the mirrored footsteps along the cliffs to the shimmering sea spirits seeking warmth, the park offers a haunting experience that is as profound as it is unsettling. In Gross Marne, the line between the living and the dead is blurred, and the natural world itself seems to watch, listen, and remember. Cape Spear, perched on the rugged coastline of Newfoundland, marks the easternmost point of North America. The cliffs rise abruptly from the Atlantic, their jagged edges battered by relentless winds and pounding waves. It is a place of raw, natural beauty, where the roar of the ocean dominates, and the horizon stretches endlessly toward the rising sun. Visitors are drawn to Cape Spear for its dramatic landscapes, its historic lighthouse, and the feeling of standing at the edge of a continent. Yet beneath the majesty of the cliffs and the charm of the old fortifications, the area holds stories that have chilled generations of travelers. Locals speak in hushed tones of ghostly apparitions, strange lights, and the lingering presence of soldiers long gone. Many who visit Cape Spear at night report seeing lights moving across the dark expanse of the Atlantic. These are not the familiar glimmers of distant fishing boats or passing ships. Witnesses describe lights that twist, drift, and dance in patterns that defy navigation or explanation. Some say they resemble lanterns carried across the water by invisible hands, shifting and bobbing as though propelled by a force that belongs to another world. Others report more alarming movements, with lights darting suddenly toward the cliffs, only to vanish before they make contact. The phenomenon has inspired countless theories, ranging from atmospheric reflections to electrical anomalies. But no explanation fully accounts for the consistent reports that stretch back decades. To those who witness it, the lights carry a presence, a sense that something unseen is moving deliberately across the water, watching, waiting, and perhaps guiding or warning those on the cliffs. The land itself is equally haunted by the memory of conflict. Cape Spear was once fortified, part of a chain of coastal defenses guarding the approaches to St. John's and the surrounding waters. Soldiers once patrolled the cliffs, standing watch against threats from the sea. Today, the forts are long abandoned, crumbling in places, Yet visitors often speak of seeing figures pacing the edges, as if the guards of old continue their eternal watch. These apparitions appear in faded military uniforms, their details sometimes clear enough to reveal rank or regiment, yet always aged, worn, and spectral. Witnesses report seeing them walking in disciplined lines along the cliff tops, pausing as if observing the waves below, or vanishing suddenly as though evaporating into the salty wind. Travelers describe these sightings with a mixture of awe and unease. Some report seeing the soldiers' reflections in the lighthouse windows or catching glimpses of them moving behind ruins. Yet when they approach, the figures are gone. Others feel a sudden drop in temperature when the soldiers appear, as if the cold Atlantic wind has intensified in their presence. The combination of visual and sensory experiences makes the encounters deeply affecting, leaving observers with the sense that the past is not merely remembered, here it is alive, etched into the cliffs and rocks themselves. Even those who come for photography or sightseeing find themselves pausing, sensing an unseen audience observing their movements from shadowed corners. The lighthouse at Cape Spear adds another layer of mystery. Built in the 19th century, it has guided countless ships safely past the treacherous coastline. At night, its beam cuts through fog and darkness, a reassuring presence for sailors and a beacon for those standing on the cliffs. Yet some visitors have reported strange anomalies associated with the lighthouse itself. On foggy evenings, people describe seeing figures near the light, sometimes appearing to signal or wave, only to disappear when approached. Others have noticed shadows moving across the walls, or hear sounds that resemble distant voices, or the echo of footsteps within the lighthouse grounds. Even the steady rotation of the lighthouse S-beam has been said to create moments of unsettling illumination, casting fleeting figures in stark relief against the rocks. Legends of Cape Spear are not confined to visual phenomena alone. Locals recount stories of disembodied voices carried on the wind, echoing across the cliffs and over the waves. Some travelers have heard the shout of a guard, the clink of boots on stone, or the murmur of soldiers conversing in a language that sounds old-fashioned and unfamiliar. These auditory experiences are often accompanied by feelings of being followed or watched, even when the cliffs appear empty. The combination of sight, sound, and atmosphere creates an environment that is both captivating and unnerving, drawing visitors into a narrative that blends history, tragedy, and the unexplained. The wildness of the landscape itself seems to amplify the uncanny experiences. The cliffs rise sharply above the Atlantic, with jagged edges and hidden crevices. The wind sweeps in from the ocean, carrying with it a briny temps and the sound of crashing waves that can mask other noises or, at times, accentuate them. Fog can roll in suddenly, obscuring the view and creating a dreamlike quality that heightens the sense of dislocation. In these conditions, the lights on the water, the shadowed soldiers, and the whispers in the wind take on a surreal, almost cinematic intensity. Visitors often describe a sense of awe mixed with fear, an understanding that Cape Spear is a place where natural beauty and the supernatural converge. Even during the day, the park exudes an air of vigilance and memory. Hikers along the cliffside trails occasionally glimpse figures out of the corner of their eyes or feel sudden chills when no wind seems to blow. Photographs taken near the ruins sometimes capture anomalous shapes that do not correspond to living people, fleeting shadows, or unexplained glows. These subtle signs reinforce the sense that the history of Cape Spear is not buried but continues to exist in layers, visible to those who are attuned to it. Cape Spear is more than a geographic landmark. It is a place where history and legend meet, where the Atlantic's fury and the cliff's endurance create a setting for encounters that defy explanation. The lights moving across the water, the spectral soldiers pacing the cliffs, and the voices on the wind all serve as reminders that the past is never truly gone. Visitors leave with more than photographs and memories. They carry a sense of having touched a world where the living and the dead share the same space, where stories etched in stone and sea remain alive, and where the edge of the continent feels haunted, eternal, and watchful. The Mackenzie River, winding through the vast expanse of Canada's Northwest Territories, is a waterway both majestic and formidable. Its icy currents stretch for thousands of kilometers, carrying with them the stories of countless generations. From indigenous peoples who first navigated its channels to fur traders, explorers, and settlers who followed. By day, the river is a stunning tableau of forests, tundra, and wide-open skies, a place where nature's beauty is on full display. Yet when night falls, a different aspect of the Mackenzie emerges, one that inspires awe, fear, and fascination. Canoeists, hunters, and travelers who venture along its banks speak of a river alive with the echoes of the past, haunted by the spirits of those who never made it home. The most widely reported phenomenon along the Mackenzie is the appearance of phantom fires along its banks. Canoeists paddling in the twilight or under moonlight sometimes glimpse flickering flames in the distance, dancing across the shorelines where no settlements exist. These fires appear suddenly, small and orange, like campfires lit by unseen hands. Some describe them as moving, shifting along the riverbank, always just out of reach. When approached, the flames often vanish or dissolve into smoke that carries no scent, leaving only the faintest warmth in the air. Many believe these spectral fires are signals from lost travelers, spirits attempting to guide or warn those who navigate the river after dark. The fires are often accompanied by other, more unsettling experiences. On quiet nights, canoeists report hearing singing or chanting drifting across the water. The voices are soft, melodic, sometimes harmonious, and yet they carry an air of melancholy that chills the listener. They cannot be traced to any visible source. They rise from the river itself, echoing along the shorelines and fading into the trees. Some hear words, names, or fragmented phrases, but the meaning is often elusive, as if the river is speaking in a language shared only by those who have passed. Canoeists describe the effect as hypnotic and disorienting, a sound that draws attention while simultaneously filling the air with unease. Many feel compelled to follow the voices, only to discover that the sounds shift as they move, always remaining just beyond reach. The river itself seems to take on a life of its own during these nights. The water's surface, ordinarily calm or gently rippling, can suddenly appear to churn as if stirred by unseen hands. Reflections of the phantom fires shimmer across the waves, distorting and multiplying in ways that defy natural physics. Canoeists often sense an awareness in the river, a consciousness that responds to their presence. Some have felt currents that push or pull their canoes without explanation, guiding them toward certain areas or away from others. The sensation is subtle, yet undeniable, as though the Mackenzie is both protector and trickster, a guardian of its own secrets. Legends surrounding the river add depth to these haunting experiences. Indigenous stories speak of spirits who dwell within the waters, beings who have claimed lives in storms, rapids, or sudden freezes. These spirits are said to wander the banks and islands, appearing as flames, shadows, or echoes of song. Some are protective, guiding lost travelers to safety, while others are restless, seeking acknowledgement or justice for deaths long past. Canoeists report an intense awareness of these presences, a feeling that the river remembers every tragedy, every life taken, and every story left unfinished. It is as if the Mackenzie carries not just water, but memory itself. Sightings are not limited to the fires and voices. Some report ghostly figures standing along the riverbanks, fleeting glimpses of people in traditional dress or clothing from centuries past. These apparitions often appear at the edges of light or fog, watching silently before vanishing. Canoeists sometimes glimpse shadows moving along shorelines where no path exists, or the reflection of figures in the water that disappear when they try to focus. The phenomenon is subtle, yet persistent, leaving a sense that the river's history is layered into the landscape, visible to those who pay attention and willing to believe. Even those who traveled the Mackenzie during daylight hours report the lingering effects of its supernatural reputation. Guides recount stories passed down through families, tales of entire canoes lost in storms, of travelers who disappeared on foggy nights, and of voices heard echoing long after people had returned home. These stories serve as warnings and as a testament to the river's enduring presence in local memory. Many canoeists take extra precautions when navigating at night, wary not just of natural hazards, but of the unseen eyes that might be watching from the water or the trees. The haunting of the Mackenzie is intensified by the river's isolation. In many stretches, the waterway passes through vast, empty landscapes where human presence is minimal. The combination of silence, darkness, and the expansive wilderness heightens every flicker of light, every distant murmur. Canoeists report an acute awareness of the river's scale and the fragility of their own presence within it. When the phantom fires appear or the songs drift across the waves, it feels as though the river itself has opened a window to another world, one in which the dead continue to live and the past refuses to fade. For those who witness these phenomena, the experience is transformative. The Mackenzie River is no longer simply a body of water to navigate or admire. It becomes a living entity, a repository of memory, grief, and unfinished journeys. The phantom fires, the ghostly singing, and the sense of life within the river create an environment where the ordinary and the supernatural overlap. Canoeists leave with more than memories of breathtaking landscapes. They carry a sense of having brushed against the unseen, having been touched by the echoes of lives that remain present in the waters of the Northwest Territories. Fundy National Park, stretching along the rugged coastline of New Brunswick, is renowned for its towering cliffs, dense forests, and the dramatic tidal shifts of the Bay of Fundy. By day, it is a place of awe-inspiring beauty, where waterfalls cascade through lush valleys and trails wind beneath canopies of ancient trees. Hikers, campers, and nature enthusiasts flock to its paths to experience the serenity of the wilderness. Yet for those who venture into the park as dusk falls, or when fog drifts low among the trees, the landscape can take on an unsettling, almost otherworldly quality. Visitors speak of disorientation, shadows moving independently of the wind, and an eerie sense that the park itself is aware of their presence. One of the most common experiences reported in Fundy National Park is the disorienting sensation of losing time. Hikers recount walking for what feels like an hour, only to emerge at a familiar point as though they had just started. Trails that are clearly marked during the day seem to twist and loop in impossible ways at twilight, creating an impression that the forest itself has shifted. Many describe the feeling as though the park exists in multiple layers, with the living wandering, a space that intersects with something unseen. In these moments, ordinary maps and compasses fail, leaving visitors to rely solely on intuition. That intuition often leads them deeper into the forest, where the strange occurrences grow more intense. Shadowy figures are another hallmark of Fundy's haunting reputation. Walkers have reported glimpsing silhouettes between the trees, fleeting shapes that appear human yet seem to move without concern for the terrain. These figures often vanish when approached, disappearing into the mist or stepping behind trunks as though they were never there. The shadows are rarely threatening, yet they evoke a profound sense of unease, a feeling that the forest is alive with watchers who belong to another time or realm. Some visitors claim the figures mirror their movements or follow just beyond the periphery of vision, reinforcing the idea that Fundy is not merely a park, but a liminal space where the boundaries between the living and the dead blur. Auditory phenomena accompany these visual anomalies. Hikers have reported footsteps echoing along trails even when they are alone. The soft snapping of twigs under invisible weight, or whispers that rise and fall with the wind. Occasionally, a rustling sound suggests a presence moving through undergrowth, yet no animal is visible. In some cases, visitors hear faint voices calling their names, or indistinct murmurs that cannot be traced. These sounds, coupled with the disorienting trail layouts, create an immersive sense that the park itself is communicating, guiding, or observing the living. The twisting trails, deep valleys, and dense canopies contribute to Fundy's sense of isolation. In areas where the forest is thickest, sunlight barely penetrates during the day, and at twilight the shadows deepen, enhancing the perception of movement where none exists. Fog often rolls in from the Bay of Fundy, cloaking the trails in mist that absorbs sound and alters perception. These natural elements, combined with the reports of shadowy figures and strange voices, create an atmosphere that is simultaneously captivating and unnerving. Visitors often describe a feeling of being caught between worlds, where time behaves differently and the rules of reality seem suspended. Local legend adds context to these experiences. The area has a long history, inhabited for centuries by indigenous peoples who held a profound spiritual connection to the land. Some stories suggest that Fundy's forests and cliffs are sacred, liminal spaces where spirits can move freely, sometimes visible to the living. Other tales speak of travelers or settlers lost within the woods, never found, their energy lingering in the landscape. Modern visitors encounters disorientation, shadow figures, and whispered sounds can be interpreted as echoes of these ancient presences. Reminders that the land retains memory and agency. Some hikers attempt to rationalize the phenomena as illusions caused by fatigue, light, or the dense environment, but many experiences defy simple explanation. The consistency of reports, people seeing shadows, hearing footsteps, and losing time suggests more than coincidence. For those who encounter the park's strange aspects, the experience leaves a lasting impression, shaping how they perceive both the natural world and the unseen. Even experienced outdoors enthusiasts, accustomed to solitude and wilderness, describe a profound unease that lingers long after leaving the trails. Visitors often describe returning to Fundy National Park with a heightened sense of awareness, drawn back by curiosity or an unresolved sense of connection to the place. Some come seeking the beauty of the waterfalls and coastal cliffs, but leave with memories of the shadows, the whispers, and the feeling that they had walked in a space where the living and the dead intersect. Trails once familiar are now enigmatic, and the forest seems to hold stories just out of reach, available only to those who venture far enough into the park's depths. Fundy National Park demonstrates how nature and the supernatural can intertwine, creating an environment that is both breathtaking and disquieting. The twisting trails, shadowy figures, phantom sounds, and sense of altered time transform ordinary hikes into experiences that challenge perception and invite reflection. For those who spend time within its bounds, Fundy is more than a destination. It is a place where the boundaries between worlds are blurred, where the past and present coexist, and where the forest seems to watch, wait, and remember. Haida Gwaii, an archipelago off the northern coast of British Columbia, is a land where the natural world and the spiritual realm seem to coexist seamlessly. Composed of dozens of islands, the region is characterized by dense temperate rainforests, rugged coastlines, and mist-laden bays. It is a place of remarkable beauty, where towering cedars and moss-draped trees dominate the landscape, and the ocean laps quietly against hidden beaches. Yet, beneath this tranquil exterior lies a layer of mystery and supernatural presence, steeped in the ancient stories and oral traditions of the Haida people, whose culture and history have been intertwined with the islands for thousands of years. Visitors and locals alike have reported phenomena that defy explanation: shadow spirits moving through the forests, phantom totems appearing in the mist, and a pervasive sense that the land itself is alive and watching. The forests of Haida Gwaii are particularly enigmatic at dusk. As sunlight fades, shadows lengthen and merge into the dense undergrowth, creating shapes that appear to move independently of the wind. Hikers and explorers frequently report glimpsing figures slipping silently between the tree stall, dark forms that vanish when approached. These are not ordinary shadows cast by branches or clouds. They are distinctly humanoid in shape, often appearing to observe those who pass through. The movement is deliberate, purposeful, and sometimes synchronized, as if the figures are aware of the observers, yet exist on a different plane of reality. Locals describe these entities as shadow spirits, guardians of the forest who have roamed the islands for centuries. Their presence, both protective and cautionary. Alongside the moving shadows, visitors often describe phantom totems emerging from the mist. Haida totem poles, carved with intricate designs representing ancestral spirits and clan histories, hold a sacred significance in the culture. In moments of fog or low visibility, travelers have reported seeing totem-like forms appear where none exists. Suspended in the mist or emerging from the tree line, these figures are sometimes complete and detailed, with recognizable faces and motifs, yet they vanish if approached or examined closely, leaving only the memory of their presence. Witnesses often experience a mixture of awe and unease, sensing that the islands are revealing fragments of their history and spiritual essence, but only fleetingly, as if testing the observer's respect and attention. The coastal areas of Haida Gwaii add another dimension to the supernatural landscape. Mist often rolls in from the Pacific Ocean, shrouding beaches and coves in a thick, ghostly veil. Within this fog, faint shapes can be glimpsed moving along the shoreline, sometimes appearing to follow travelers or disappear into the water. Some visitors describe hearing faint chanting or the distant sound of drums carried on the wind, echoing through the forest and along the cliffs. These sounds are often subtle, almost imperceptible, yet they leave a strong impression, creating the sensation that the land and sea are alive with memory and intention. Many believe these auditory phenomena are tied to ancestral spirits, their presence persisting to honor the living and safeguard the sacred spaces of the islands. Haida legends provide context for these uncanny experiences. The islands have long been regarded as a liminal space, a place where the boundary between the material and spiritual worlds is thin. Stories passed down through generations speak of spirits who inhabit the forests, waters, and cliffs, interacting with the living in subtle and mysterious ways. Some shadow spirits are described as guides, showing travelers the safest paths or leading them away from danger, while others serve as reminders of respect for the land and its history. The phantom totems, according to tradition, are manifestations of ancestral power, appearing only when the observer is attuned to the spiritual energy of the islands. These encounters are rarely malevolent. Instead, they reflect a world where the natural and supernatural coexist in balance, requiring mindfulness, reverence, and humility. Many visitors report a strong sense of time distortion on Haida Gwaii. Trails that appear short on a map can seem endless in the mist, and the rhythm of daylight can feel altered by the shifting fog and dense forest canopy. This temporal disorientation often heightens the impact of shadow sightings and totem apparitions, creating an immersive experience where perception and reality blur. Canoeists navigating the archipelago's waters have noted strange reflections in the ocean, faint figures along the shorelines, and lights that shift unpredictably in the fog. Even seasoned travelers accustomed to wilderness environments describe a profound sense of the islands watching, a sensation that cannot be fully explained by natural phenomena. Photography and other visual documentation sometimes capture anomalies that correspond to these experiences. Photographs taken in dense mist or twilight conditions occasionally reveal shapes that were not visible to the naked eye. Vague silhouettes, elongated shadows, or faint totem-like forms. These images reinforce the sense that Haida Gwaii is a place where the ordinary and extraordinary intersect, where the environment retains echoes of the past and the presence of spirits is not limited to oral tradition. Visitors leave the islands with stories that blend history, culture, and the inexplicable, accounts that are retold with reverence and curiosity. For those who spend time on Haida Gwaii, the experience is transformative. The shadow spirits, phantom totems, and otherworldly sounds create a deep awareness of the island's history, the power of ancestral presence, and the sacred nature of the land. Hikers, campers, and travelers often report returning home with a heightened sensitivity to the unseen, a sense of the natural world as alive and intentional, and an understanding that the islands are more than a collection of forests and coastlines. They are a living repository of memory, spirituality, and continuity. Haida Gwaii is a place where the boundaries between worlds are permeable, where mist and shadow conceal stories older than recorded history, and where those who tread carefully may catch glimpses of the unseen. The forests, the coastlines, and the waters are alive with spirits who move silently and observe attentively, revealing fragments of their presence only to those willing to notice. The islands are more than scenic beauty, they are a living testament to the intertwining of human and natural history. A place where the spiritual realm leaves traces that linger in the eyes, ears, and hearts of all who visit. Lake Louise, nestled in the heart of Alberta's Rocky Mountains, is renowned for its turquoise waters, framed by towering peaks and glaciers that shimmer under the sun. Tourists from around the world flock to its shores, eager to hike its trails, paddle its waters, and capture photographs of its unparalleled beauty. On the surface, the lake is a jewel of nature, serene and inviting. Yet beneath its vibrant exterior, Lake Louise hides a series of chilling phenomena that have unsettled visitors for decades. Locals and travelers alike whisper of ghostly apparitions, strange sensations, and spectral presences that linger along the shoreline, revealing a side of the lake that contrasts sharply with its postcard-perfect reputation. Among the most frequently reported sightings are the faces that seem to emerge from beneath the water. Hikers, swimmers, and canoeists describe glimpsing features just under the surface, fuzzy mouths, and expressions that vanish the moment they focus on them. Sometimes these faces appear calm, almost mournful, gazing upward as if pleading or observing. Other times, they seem distorted, twisted in expressions of fear or sorrow. Photographs taken at dawn or dusk have occasionally captured inexplicable ripples or shadows in the water, giving credence to tales that the lake holds echoes of past tragedies. Some locals believe these faces belong to mountaineers or travelers who perished in the surrounding peaks, their spirits tied to the lake, forever watching the waters below. Visitors have also reported the sensation of cold hands brushing against their ankles while walking along the shoreline or wading near the edges. These touches are fleeting yet unmistakable, often accompanied by the sudden feeling of a chill or a shiver that seems to come from nowhere. Hikers and swimmers alike describe the experience as both terrifying and surreal, as though unseen presences are reminding them that the lake is not just a scenic attraction, but a place steeped in history and memory. Some attribute these sensations to the restless spirits of those who attempted to conquer the surrounding mountains but never returned, their energy lingering in the misty waters and rocky shores of Lake Louise. The surrounding peaks themselves are the site of another haunting phenomenon. Ghostly mountaineers, often described in early 20th century climbing attire, have been seen along the trails or near the lake's edges, staring at the mountains they never conquered. These figures are often motionless, as if frozen in contemplation, their eyes fixed on the distant glaciers and snow-capped ridges. At times, hikers have reported hearing the faint sounds of climbing gear, the scrape of ice axes, or muffled voices carried by the wind. These spectral climbers appear to be endlessly striving toward their goals, eternally watching the peaks that claimed their lives. Observers often report a mixture of awe and unease, sensing that these apparitions are reminders of human mortality and the unforgiving nature of the mountains. Photographs and videos taken near the lake occasionally reveal anomalies, blurred figures, while others capture subtle disturbances on the water's surface that vanish when investigators arrive. These visual signs reinforce the experiences of those who walk the shores, suggesting that Lake Louise holds layers of presence, both living and spectral, intertwined in a landscape that is as much haunted as it is beautiful. Local legends and historical accounts provide context for these experiences. The mountains surrounding Lake Louise have claimed countless lives over the decades. Early mountaineers, explorers, and settlers often faced treacherous conditions, avalanches, and sudden storms. Those who perished were sometimes never recovered, leaving families and communities with unresolved grief. Indigenous oral histories also speak of spirits inhabiting the lakes and mountains, beings who interact with a living world in subtle ways, guiding, warning, or reminding humans of the fragility of life. Together, these stories have woven a complex tapestry of history and spirituality that seems to manifest in the eerie occurrences observed at Lake Louise. Visitors describe a unique atmosphere at the lake, where the stunning natural beauty is juxtaposed with a profound sense of the supernatural. Even during daylight, hikers report moments of unease, a sense of being watched, shadows that move against the light, or sudden shifts in temperature that chill the skin. In the early morning mist or at twilight, these sensations intensify, creating an environment where perception and reality blur. The lake becomes more than a scenic destination. It transforms into a place where history, memory, and the unknown converge. Despite the unsettling reports, Lake Louise continues to draw tourists and adventurers. Many come hoping to witness the lake's beauty, unaware of the spectral layer beneath the surface. Those who do encounter its supernatural aspects often leave with stories of faces in the water, cold touches, and mountaineers who never gave up their pursuit of the peaks. The experiences vary from subtle and fleeting to intensely vivid, yet all share a common thread: the sense that Lake Louise is alive with memory. Its waters and cliffs preserving the echoes of lives lost, ambitions unfulfilled, and spirits that remain tied to the land. Lake Louise exemplifies a rare intersection of natural grandeur and spectral mystery. From the faces emerging beneath the surface to ghostly climbers on the trails, the lake and its surroundings hold stories that refuse to be forgotten. Visitors leave not only with photographs and memories of breathtaking scenery, but also with the lingering impression that they have walked alongside the unseen, glimpsed a fragment of the past, and felt the enduring presence of the lake's restless spirits. The beauty of Lake Louise is undeniable, yet its chilling phenomena remind all who visit that beneath the turquoise waters and snow-capped peaks, the line between the living and the dead is often thinner than it seems. The Fraser Canyon, carving its way through the heart of British Columbia, is a landscape of breathtaking beauty and peril. Towering cliffs rise sharply from the river below, their jagged faces etched by centuries of geological upheaval. Dense forests cling to narrow ledges, and the Fraser River roars through the valley with a force that has shaped the land and the lives of those who attempt to traverse it. By day, the canyon attracts hikers, photographers, and adventurers drawn to its natural grandeur. Yet beneath this stunning exterior lies a history steeped in tragedy, danger, and stories that have given the region a reputation as one of the most haunted places in Canada. For locals, the Fraser Canyon is not merely a scenic wonder, it is a land alive with memory, loss, and the unseen presence of those who never left. The canyon's perilous terrain has claimed countless lives over the centuries. Miners drawn during the gold rush, loggers working along the steep slopes, and travelers navigating treacherous paths have all met untimely deaths. Landslides, rockfalls, sudden storms, and missteps have claimed both the experienced and the unsuspecting. Some bodies were never recovered, swept away by the river or buried beneath rock and debris. Over time, these tragedies became woven into local folklore, creating an enduring sense that the land itself carries a memory of sorrow and danger, and that those who perished remain, in some way, present along the canyon's edges. Visitors today often report unsettling phenomena that hint at the canyon's haunted past. Shadowy figures are frequently glimpsed wandering along cliff tops or standing on ledges where there is no path. These figures are often human in shape but indistinct, appearing in peripheral vision before vanishing when approached. Hikers and climbers describe a sudden awareness of being watched, as if unseen eyes are tracking their movements. Some have reported hearing footsteps echoing along narrow trails or the soft scrape of clothing against rock, yet when they look, the trails are empty. The presence of these figures is often fleeting, but their impact is lasting, leaving those who encounter them with an eerie sense of another world overlapping the living landscape. Rocks tumbling from cliffs are another common phenomenon. Travelers have witnessed boulders and smaller stones dislodging from canyon walls in areas too steep or inaccessible for climbers. The sound of tumbling rocks, sometimes loud, sometimes faint, can come without warning, echoing off the canyon walls. In many cases, hikers report seeing the stones roll along paths where no one else is present, or land with no discernible cause. Locals whisper that these movements are not natural, that the canyon itself is restless, perhaps restless with grief or rage. Some suggest that the land is protective, driving away the living who venture too close to places marked by sorrow. while others believe it is vengeful, cursed by the countless deaths that have occurred over generations. The Fraser Canyon's supernatural reputation extends beyond visual and auditory phenomena. Many visitors speak of sudden shifts in temperature, gusts of wind that rise inexplicably along cliff faces, or mist that forms in dense, unnatural patterns, obscuring paths and landmarks. Trails that should be familiar can twist and turn unexpectedly, creating disorientation and a sense of timelessness. Those who venture alone often feel the canyon has a consciousness, responding to their presence and guiding them in subtle ways. Even experienced outdoors enthusiasts describe an intangible tension, a feeling that the canyon is alive and aware, that it remembers every tragedy and may not take kindly to trespassers. Indigenous legends provide further context for the canyon's eerie reputation. The land has long been inhabited and traversed by First Nations peoples, who hold deep spiritual connections to the Fraser River and its cliffs. Oral histories speak of spirits that guard the river and the surrounding terrain, beings who can appear to the living in forms, both familiar and strange. Some spirits are said to guide travelers to safety, while others warn or punish those who act recklessly or disrespectfully. Many locals believe that the shadowy figures and sudden rockfalls observed today are echoes of these ancestral presences, manifestations of a spiritual consciousness that has endured alongside the physical landscape for centuries. The canyon also carries a psychological weight that amplifies these experiences. The sheer scale of the cliffs, the roar of the river far below, and the isolation of many trails create an environment where perception is heightened. Hikers report that even ordinary movements, the rustle of leaves, the crack of a branch can take on supernatural significance. When combined with local legends and historical knowledge of past tragedies, these sensations leave an indelible impression, convincing many that the Fraser Canyon is a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is thin. For travelers who venture into the canyon, the experience is often humbling. The beauty of the landscape is undeniable, but it exists alongside a profound awareness of mortality and the presence of the unseen. Shadowy figures, dislodging rocks, sudden chills, and the echo of distant footsteps serve as reminders that the canyon holds centuries of memory and loss. Visitors leave with more than photographs or memories of towering cliffs. They carry stories of moments when the living world intersected with the spectral, and of a land that refuses to let the past be forgotten. The Fraser Canyon is more than a scenic marvel. It is a living monument to human struggle and the enduring presence of spirits tied to the land. Every shadow along the cliffs, every echoing footstep, and every inexplicable rockfall serves as a testament to a region where history, nature, and the supernatural converge. Locals whisper of curses and restless spirits, and those who traverse its trails often report experiences that defy explanation. The canyon stands as both awe-inspiring and unsettling, a reminder that some landscapes are shaped not only by geological forces, but by the memories and energies of those who have walked and fallen before. Ghost Lake, a quiet reservoir nestled west of Calgary, is known for its serene beauty by day, but as dusk falls, the lake takes on a far more ominous character. Surrounded by rolling hills and dense patches of trees, the water appears calm and reflective in the fading light. Yet locals and visitors alike whisper of strange phenomena that have haunted the lake for decades. The surface of Ghost Lake, though still and mirror-like during daylight hours, becomes a stage for unexplainable occurrences as night descends, echoes of laughter that carry across the water, shadowy figures appearing to walk upon the waves, and glowing eyes that peer from the shoreline, watching anyone who dares to venture near. The most common reports involve the eerie laughter that seems to drift across the reservoir at night. Those camping along the lake's edge or fishing from small boats have described hearing clear, childlike giggles that emerge from the darkness. The sounds are not faint. They are close enough to be understood, yet impossible to locate. Attempting to follow the laughter often proves futile, as it seems to shift position with every step, moving from one part of the shoreline to another with uncanny speed. Some say The laughter belongs to spirits of children who drowned long ago, while others claim it is the playful trickery of restless entities that inhabit the lake. Regardless of the explanation, the effect is universally unsettling, a reminder that Ghost Lake is far more than a tranquil body of water. Even more unsettling are the reports of figures appearing to walk on the lake's surface. On still nights, when the water reflects the moon and stars like a polished mirror, observers have seen human-like shapes rise from the mist and traverse the lake, as if it were solid ground. These figures are often described as tall and thin, their forms dark and indistinct, and their movements slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Witnesses recall holding their breath, frozen in awe and fear, as the figures advance across the water before dissolving into ripples, leaving no trace behind. Some fishermen have tried to row closer, only to find nothing there, as if the lake itself had swallowed them. The phenomenon has no clear explanation, though folklore suggests that these are the lost souls of those who perished in the lake or travelers who never returned from its shores. The shoreline itself is not free from supernatural activity. Visitors often report seeing pairs of glowing eyes watching them from the darkness, barely discernible through the brush and undergrowth. These eyes appear without any audible movement or sound, remaining fixed on anyone who approaches. Sometimes, observers swear the eyes move along with them, disappearing only when they retreat. Campers and hikers describe an unnerving sensation of being observed, of an intelligence behind the gaze that seems to assess their every movement. Whether these lights are the manifestation of spirits, animals, or something entirely unexplainable, they contribute to the lake's reputation as a place where the living are never truly alone. The combination of these eerie phenomena has cultivated a local lore that is both rich and unsettling. Ghost Lake is said to have claimed numerous lives over the decades, whether through boating accidents, drowning, or simply the unpredictable forces of nature that sweep across its surface. Indigenous traditions of the area speak of water spirits inhabiting the lake, entities that could manifest in both protective and malevolent ways. Some stories recount entire communities witnessing strange apparitions on misty evenings, tales that have been passed down for generations, reinforcing the idea that the lake is imbued with restless energy that persists to this day. Even those who approach Ghost Lake with skepticism find themselves affected. The sounds of night on the lake, the gentle lapping of waves, the distant calls of nocturnal wildlife, and the occasional snap of a branch seem amplified in the presence of the unknown. Laughter that cannot be located, figures walking where no ground exists, and glowing eyes in the brush create a heightened sense of awareness, where every shadow and reflection becomes a potential sign of something beyond comprehension. People report leaving the lake with a lingering unease, a sensation that they have glimpsed another layer of reality that exists just beyond normal perception. Photographs taken at Ghost Lake occasionally capture anomalies that reinforce these stories. Blurred shapes appear over the water, faint lights hover near the shoreline, and misty forms seem to drift across the surface. While some images are dismissed as tricks of light or camera error, many inexplicable photos add weight to the accounts of those who have experienced the lake's supernatural side firsthand. Each new sighting or recording perpetuates the mystery, keeping the legend of Ghost Lake alive and inviting others to witness its strange phenomena for themselves. Visitors to the lake often speak of the paradox it presents, a place of breathtaking natural beauty intertwined with a palpable sense of the supernatural. The calm waters and scenic vistas mask a darker reality, one where laughter echoes with no source, shadows defy explanation, and unseen eyes remain vigilant. For those who tread near the shoreline at night, the lake is a reminder that even the most tranquil landscapes can harbor mysteries that refuse to be ignored. Ghost Lake remains a destination for thrill seekers, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious travelers. Its reputation as a site of spectral activity ensures that the stories continue, passed from one generation to the next. The laughter, the figures on the water, and the glowing eyes are not merely tales, they are experiences that visitors recount with reverence and trepidation. Encounters that leave an indelible mark on anyone who witnesses them. The lake's surface may seem placid, reflecting the moon and stars. But beneath that calm exterior lies a history of loss, mystery, and lingering spirits that continue to claim attention long after darkness falls. Della Falls Trail in British Columbia is renowned for its staggering waterfall, one of the tallest in Canada, cascading nearly 1,500 feet into a misty basin below. The trail itself winds through dense old-growth forests, moss-covered rocks, and rugged switchbacks that test even the most experienced hikers. By day, the trail is a haven for nature enthusiasts, photographers, and adventurers seeking the grandeur of the Pacific Northwest. Yet, beneath the beauty and serenity lies a history steeped in mystery, tragedy, and stories of the supernatural. Locals and visitors alike whisper of strange occurrences along the trail, echoing whispers in the forest. Shadowy figures at twilight, and ghostly miners wandering with lanterns in search of veins of silver that no longer exist. The Della Falls Trail is challenging, requiring multiple days of hiking through wilderness terrain, crossing streams, and navigating steep inclines. Many hikers report that even experienced outdoors people feel a subtle unease on the path. As the trail twists and turns, a sense of being watched sometimes grows, as though unseen eyes track every step. In the quietest moments, travelers speak of whispers that seem to follow them along the cracks. These sounds are faint, almost unintelligible, like fragments of conversation or distant warnings carried on the wind. When hikers stop to listen, the voices often vanish, leaving only the rustling of trees and the distant roar of the falls. Some believe these whispers are remnants of those who perished in the wilderness, their voices lingering in the forest as echoes of the past. Another commonly reported phenomenon involves ghostly miners. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, prospectors and miners scoured the surrounding mountains in search of silver, gold, and other minerals. Many of these individuals faced treacherous conditions, sudden storms, and steep cliffs, claimed numerous lives, and some miners were never found. Today, hikers occasionally claim to see faint lights moving through the trees at dusk or after dark, resembling lanterns swinging in time with human movement. Shadowy figures appear along the trail, often just beyond the edge of vision, sometimes crouched near rock faces or wandering along the ridgelines. Observers describe the miners as methodical, endlessly searching, as if their quest for lost silver continues into eternity. Approaching these apparitions is often futile. They vanish when closely examined, leaving only the swaying glow of light in the mist. The combination of natural sounds and supernatural impressions amplifies the trail's eerie reputation. The roar of Della Falls echoes for miles, sometimes masking the whispers and sometimes carrying them further than expected. The wind, shifting through the canopy of cedar and fir, can create illusions of footsteps or distant voices. Even the steady drip of condensation from moss-covered rocks can take on a rhythm that seems deliberate, like the measured steps of someone walking unseen. Hikers report sudden drops in temperature, an icy chill that appears to seep through clothing, coinciding with glimpses of shadowy figures or lantern lights. These sensations combine to create an atmosphere where the boundary between the physical world and the supernatural feels unusually thin. Lantern-like glows appear in the trees or along the trail. Blurred figures manifest in misty clearings, and shadows seem to stretch unnaturally along rock faces. While skeptics attribute some sightings to optical illusions or the interplay of light and forest, many hikers insist that what they saw could not be explained by nature alone. The combination of historical knowledge, the trail's remoteness, and the chilling ambience of the falls makes it difficult to dismiss the experiences entirely. Indigenous lore and local legend also contribute to the Della Falls Trail's haunted reputation. The surrounding lands have been inhabited and traversed for centuries by First Nations peoples, who hold deep spiritual connections to the waterfalls, forests, and mountains. Stories speak of spirits that roam the wilderness, guiding or warning travelers and reminding the living of the sacredness of the land. These spirits, according to tradition, are neither wholly benevolent nor malevolent, and their presence is felt most strongly in places of natural power like the towering falls, the steep switchbacks, and the dense, shadowy forests of the trail. Some believe that the ghostly miners and whispers are a continuation of this spiritual vigilance, a blending of human history and the enduring energy of the land itself. Visitors to the Della Falls Trail often leave with a profound sense of having glimpsed another layer of reality. The trail offers breathtaking views and unforgettable natural beauty, yet it is impossible to ignore the subtle, haunting presence that seems to inhabit the woods. Travelers recount feeling unseen eyes upon them, hearing voices that vanish when approached, and witnessing ghostly lanterns flickering in the misty distance. These experiences create a lasting impression, intertwining awe of the natural world with an awareness of the past and the unseen. The legend of Della Falls is not merely a collection of ghost stories. It is a testament to the enduring history of the land and the people who once traversed it. Shadowy figures, whispered voices, and ethereal lanterns remind hikers that the wilderness is alive with memory. Every twist of the trail, every roar of the falls, and every glimpse of a flickering light speaks to lives lost, quests unfinished, and a landscape that preserves the echoes of history. The trail invites admiration and respect, offering a rare encounter with both natural majesty and the supernatural, a haunting experience that lingers long after hikers return to the safety of civilization. Della Falls Trail remains one of British Columbia's most striking natural destinations, yet it is also one of its most mysterious. From the whispered voices along the switchbacks to the spectral miners with ghostly lanterns, the trail blends beauty and danger, reality and the supernatural, creating an atmosphere that captivates and unnerves in equal measure. Those who walk its path carry stories of shadows, lights, and whispers, experiences that remind all who venture there that some trails are not merely routes through the wilderness, they are corridors to the past, where the living and the dead walk side by side. The prairies of Manitoba and Saskatchewan stretch endlessly, vast fields of golden wheat and swaying grasses that seem to ripple like the surface of a great, undulating sea. By day, they are serene and picturesque, a landscape of open skies and distant horizons that offer a sense of freedom and space unmatched anywhere else. But when night falls, the plains transform into something far more unsettling. Locals and travelers alike whisper of strange occurrences, phantom figures, and inexplicable lights that haunt these rolling fields. The land, beautiful and expansive as it is, carries the memory of countless tragedies, from blizzards that claimed lives to travelers who vanished without a trace, leaving only lingering spirits behind. One of the most enduring legends of the prairies involves phantom horsemen, spectral riders who traverse the fields in the dead of night. Witnesses describe them as tall, shadowy figures mounted on black horses, moving silently across the plains. Their presence is fleeting yet unmistakable, often seen only from the corner of the eye or briefly illuminated by the moon. Some locals claim these horsemen are the spirits of settlers, fur traders, or cavalrymen who perished on the open plains, their bodies lost to storms or accidents, forever doomed to ride the land they once sought to conquer. Travelers who encounter the riders report a chilling sense of being watched, and many speak of a sudden drop in temperature, a cold wind that seems to sweep across the fields with the ghostly cavalcade. In addition to the spectral horsemen, many farmers and wanderers have reported strange, glowing lights moving through their crops at night. These lights often appear as small orbs or lantern-like glimmers, darting among the wheat and barley without following any logical pattern. Observers describe them as intelligent, as though the lights are aware of their presence, weaving and twisting in patterns that defy natural explanation. Some believe these lights are the restless spirits of those who perished in blizzards, storms, or accidents, unable to find peace and endlessly wandering the open fields. Others claim the lights are omens, warnings to travelers to stave off the plains after dark, or messages from ancestors urging caution in a land that can be both beautiful and deadly. The history of the prairies adds weight to these stories. Winters in Manitoba and Saskatchewan can be brutal, with blizzards appearing suddenly and snowdrifts forming taller than a person in minutes. Throughout history, many pioneers, traders, and travelers became trapped in these storms, succumbing to the cold or vanishing entirely. In the flat expanse, there was little shelter from the wind, no landmarks to guide the lost, and few chances for survival. Those who disappeared were sometimes never found, leaving behind families and communities with only grief and speculation. It is from these tragedies that the legends of ghostly horsemen and wandering spirits likely arise, a supernatural echo of the countless lives claimed by the unforgiving plains. Visitors to the prairies at night often describe a strange duality. On one hand, there is the awe-inspiring beauty of the open land, the vast skies stretching to the horizon, and the soft rustle of grasses in the wind. On the other, there is an unshakable sense of being observed, of unseen presences moving just beyond the range of sight. Many hikers, campers, and nighttime drivers report hearing distant hoofbeat, faint whispers, or the creak of leather saddles, even when no one is visible. Some have claimed to see fleeting shadows that mimic human or equine forms, vanishing when approached, but leaving a deep sense of unease in their wake. The glowing lights weaving through crops are equally enigmatic. Farmers speak of waking to find entire fields subtly altered, stalks bent or shifted as though invisible hands had passed through them. Hunters and hikers report seeing these lights hover, split into multiple orbs, or disappear instantly into the horizon. Photographs sometimes capture faint blurs or faint points of light, defying explanation and reinforcing the legends told around campfires and family gatherings. To those who live off the land, these phenomena are both a source of fear and a reminder of the prairie's history, its beauty intertwined with the memory of hardship and loss. Indigenous stories add another layer to the haunting of the prairies. Many First Nations groups inhabited and traversed these lands long before settlers arrived. Their oral traditions speak of spirits tied to the wind, snow, and open fields, entities that could protect or punish depending on human behavior. Some elders recount tales of shadowy riders or lights that warn the living of danger, echoing the experiences described by later settlers. The combination of indigenous lore, settler history, and first-hand accounts creates a complex tapestry, suggesting that the prairies are more than just open land. They are a place where the past lingers, and the boundary between the living and the dead is thinner than most realize. Those who experience these phenomena often leave with a sense of reverence and unease. The endless horizon, the whisper of wind through the wheat, the sudden appearance of lights or shadows all remind visitors that the prairies are a place where human presence is fleeting, where lives have been lost, and where memories linger in the landscape itself. The rolling fields of Manitoba and Saskatchewan are alive with history, tragedy, and the supernatural, a testament to the enduring presence of those who walked or rode before. Even for those who never encounter the ghostly horsemen or the glowing lights, the prairies inspire stories, speculation, and an awareness of the vast, untamed wilderness. The land invites both admiration and caution, a reminder that beauty often conceals danger and that the spirits of the past may still roam the fields, eternally wandering, forever watching, and forever riding across the open plains. The Bay of Fundy, stretching between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, is a place of astonishing natural power. Its tides are the highest in the world, rising and falling with a force that has shaped the coastline for millennia. At low tide, vast mudflats are exposed, dotted with jagged rocks and tidal pools. At high tide, the waters surge dramatically, swallowing beaches and cliffs with relentless energy. But beyond its natural wonders, the Bay of Fundy is a place of eerie mysteries and unexplained phenomena that have haunted sailors, fishermen, and hikers for generations. Sudden mists appear without warning, sailors vanish, and strange drums and chanting echo across empty cliffs, giving the coastline a presence that feels almost alive. The tides themselves are a double-edged marvel. Mariners have long respected the bay for its beauty and power, but countless ships and small boats have been claimed by the water over the centuries. Sudden surges can trap vessels against jagged rocks, and swift currents pull even the strongest swimmers into danger. Those who vanished often left no trace, yet stories persist that their spirits remain. Local legend speaks of ghostly sailors appearing briefly atop the waves before dissolving into the fog, rowing silently along the waters they once navigated. Witnesses describe pale figures, wet hair clinging to their faces, staring forward as though driven by some unseen purpose. The riverine mists seem to act as a veil, hiding these apparitions until they vanish just as quickly as they appeared. The cliffs that rise sharply from the bay's edges hold their own unnerving stories. Hikers and coastal explorers have reported strange sounds at night, drums and chants echoing across empty ledges and rock formations. The music seems both distant and immediate, vibrating in the bones of those who hear it. The language is unknown, sometimes forming rhythmic patterns, sometimes just broken syllables carried on the wind. The sounds are impossible to locate, appearing to move from cliff to cliff, leaving those who hear them feeling disoriented and watched. Many who stumble upon these echoes describe a chilling sensation, as if the cliffs themselves are alive with unseen energy, a pulse that resonates with both the land and the lost souls who may inhabit it. Mist is a constant presence along the bay, and it often arrives with sudden, uncanny precision. Sailors tell of fogs that roll in from the water, dense and cold, erasing the horizon and swallowing landmarks. In this haze, figures seem to emerge, shapes that walk the shoreline, sometimes carrying lanterns or tools, sometimes empty. Travelers report glimpses of men and women in clothing from past centuries, frozen in place or moving slowly along the mudflats. Approaching them usually results in nothing. The figures dissolve into the mist, leaving behind only damp air and the faint sound of footsteps on wet sand. These apparitions are often associated with those who perished at sea, the bay's tragic history manifesting in fleeting, ghostly forms. The indigenous Micmac people have long spoken of the bay as a spiritual and liminal place, inhabited by entities tied to both water and land. Some believe these spirits protect or warn the living, while others punish those who are reckless or disrespectful. Folklore describes beings that rise from the water with the tides, guiding or discouraging travelers, and explains many of the ghostly sightings along the cliffs and shoreline. For generations, these stories have mingled with those of European settlers and mariners, creating a rich tapestry of supernatural lore that paints the Bay of Fundy as more than just a geographic marvel. It is a living, breathing presence, aware of those who enter its domain. Even those who do not witness ghostly figures or hear strange music often feel the bay's unsettling energy. The combination of massive tidal changes, rising mists, and rugged cliffs creates a landscape that can disorient, confuse, and awe all at once. Photographs occasionally capture anomalies, lights in the fog, blurred shapes along the shoreline, or reflections that do not correspond to any physical object. While skeptics dismiss these images as tricks of nature or camera lens distortions, countless first-hand accounts tell a consistent story. The Bay of Fundy is alive in ways beyond human understanding, a space where the past, the unseen, and the natural world intertwine. Visitors leave the bay with lasting impressions, aware that its beauty is inseparable from its strangeness. The tides, mists, and cliffs are a reminder that nature is both powerful and mysterious. But the apparitions and sounds suggest something more, an echo of lives lost, of warnings whispered across generations, of a coastline that refuses to be fully tamed or understood. The Bay of Fundy is a place where history and the supernatural converge, where each wave and each gust of wind carries the memory of the past, and where those who walk its edges may sense, just for a moment, that the living and the dead share the same space. The Whitehorse Rapids, located along the Yukon River, are a place of both breathtaking beauty and deadly history. During the height of the gold rush in the late 19th century, these treacherous waters claimed countless lives. Prospectors, traders, and adventurers attempting to navigate the rapids were often swept away in moments, their boats shattered against rocks, their screams lost to the roaring currents. Today, the rapids are quieter, but the echoes of those tragedies linger. Locals and visitors alike whisper of ghostly phenomena, screams carried over the water, phantom boats, and figures that appear and vanish in the frothy white waves. Even in modern times, the Whitehorse Rapids command respect. The Yukon River flows swiftly here, narrow channels funneling the water into a chaotic maze of rocks and turbulent currents. Canoeists and kayakers venturing into the rapids often describe an uncanny feeling, a sense that they are not alone. Many recount hearing cries, shouts, or screams, too human to be dismissed as the wind or rushing water. Some describe the sounds as coming from nowhere, rising suddenly above the roar of the river, only to vanish as abruptly as they appeared. Witnesses suggest these are the echoes of the gold rush era, trapped in the turbulence, replaying their final moments for anyone brave or foolish enough to listen. Phantom boats are another recurring phenomenon. On misty mornings or at dusk, some canoeists report seeing vessels appear in the currents. These boats are often small, wooden, and aged in appearance, seemingly from another century. They drift as if caught in slow motion, paddles frozen in the hands of ghostly figures, yet the water around them remains as rough as ever. Observers often try to approach, only for the boats to vanish, sometimes splintering into nothingness or dissolving into the white spray. Stories tell of crews frozen in time, men and women caught forever in the chaos that once claimed them, their journey never complete. Some speculate that the spirits are trapped, unable to leave the river, their presence a warning or a lingering curse from the violent history of the rapids. The geography of the Whitehorse Rapids contributes to the eerie feeling of the place. The surrounding cliffs and forests amplify every sound, carrying echoes in ways that confuse the ear and the mind. The mist that rises from the turbulent water can obscure vision completely, creating an otherworldly atmosphere where shapes and shadows appear to float just above the waves. Canoeists often describe glimpsing figures on the rocks or in the spray, sometimes fully formed, sometimes only hints of human outlines. When they attempt to focus, the shapes dissolve, leaving only the roar of water and the haunting memory of what they thought they saw. Some of the most unsettling accounts come from those who navigate the rapids alone. Solo canoeists describe a feeling of being followed, of invisible eyes tracking their every move. The water sometimes seems to move differently around them, currents shifting subtly, as if guiding or blocking them. In moments of stillness, they hear whispers indecipherable at first, then occasionally forming words, warnings, or calls for help. These experiences leave a profound impression, a mixture of fear, awe, and respect for the power of the river and the spirits said to inhabit it. Indigenous traditions surrounding the Yukon River lend further context to the hauntings. Many First Nations groups consider the river sacred, believing it to be inhabited by spirits that protect and punish, depending on human behavior. Legends speak of souls lost in the waters who rise again, their presence felt as sounds, shapes, or sudden chills. Some elders warn that the river is a liminal space, where the living and the dead coexist, a place where history and nature intertwine in ways beyond ordinary understanding. The Gold Rush tragedies, layered on top of these ancient beliefs, give the Whitehorse Rapids a reputation as a corridor between worlds, a place where the echoes of the past refuse to fade. Over time, the rapids have drawn adventurers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts, or the fleeting outline of a boat that disappears in the foam. While skeptics attribute these sightings to weather conditions or optical illusions, the consistency of accounts over decades suggests that something unusual persists here. The stories are more than folklore. They are shared experiences, passed from guide to canoeist, from generation to generation, reinforcing the rapids' reputation as haunted waters. Visitors often leave the Whitehorse Rapids with a mixture of awe and unease. The river, alive with movement and memory, reminds them of the fragility of life and the enduring power of history. The screams, phantom boats, and shadowy figures are not merely tales, they are experiences. Encounters that challenge the mind and unsettle the spirit. Even for those who do not see the apparitions or hear the cries, the river carries a sense of presence. A feeling that the past is not gone but ever flowing, just beneath the surface of the frothing waters. The Whitehorse Rapids remain a symbol of both natural grandeur and haunting memory. They are a place where the beauty of the Yukon collides with tragedy, where adventurers confront the untamed forces of nature, and where the echoes of lives lost continue to ripple through the water. The ghostly phenomena, whether legend or reality, serve as a reminder that some places hold on to their history with a grip that defies time, and that the Whitehorse Rapids are not only a challenge to navigate, they are a portal to the past, where the living brush against the spirits of those who never made it home. Niagara Gorge in Ontario is a place of breathtaking natural beauty, with the rushing waters of the Niagara River carved deep through rock, creating cliffs and ravines that inspire awe by day. Yet as night falls, the gorge takes on a different character, one shrouded in mystery, danger, and lingering tragedy. Stories of lost travelers, unexplained disappearances, and shadowy figures climbing the cliffs have circulated for generations. Whispered among hikers, local residents, and those drawn to the wilderness by curiosity or adventure, the gorge, with its steep walls and hidden ledges, seems to hold on to the memories of every person who has ever wandered too close to its edges. The natural landscape of Niagara Gorge is unforgiving. The cliffs rise sharply from the river, some dropping hundreds of feet into churning waters below. Over the centuries, many have fallen victim to missteps, rockslides, and sudden accidents. Legends speak of travelers who vanished without a trace, hikers who ventured off marked trails and were never seen again. These disappearances have given rise to stories that the gorge itself is alive, as if the cliffs and currents claim those who underestimate their power. Locals often warn visitors to respect the terrain, not only for safety, but because some believe the spirits of the lost still wander the area. Among the most persistent tales are those of shadowy figures moving along the cliffs. Hikers and evening visitors recount seeing silhouettes climbing steep rock faces or pacing along narrow ledges, sometimes stopping to glance downward as if aware of observers. These figures are rarely fully visible. They flicker at the edge of perception, their shapes elongated or distorted by the fading light. When approached, they vanish, leaving behind only the echo of movement and the unsettling sensation of being watched. Some speculate these are the ghosts of those who perished in the gorge, forever repeating the last moments of their lives, while others believe they are manifestations of the gorge's own restless energy. The river itself adds to the eerie atmosphere. At night, mists rise from the water, swirling along the cliffs and obscuring vision. These fogs can appear suddenly, as if drawn up from the depths, creating a sense of isolation even when the area is not remote. Within the mist, strange sounds are often reported. The rushing of water amplified into unnatural roars, the distant crash of rocks, and sometimes low, mournful cries that seem human yet carry no identifiable source. Observers describe an almost magnetic pull toward the cliff edges during these moments, a subtle but undeniable tug that makes the terrain feel alive and threatening. Many who visit the gorge after dark report other inexplicable phenomena. Rocks and debris sometimes tumble without any visible cause, and sudden gusts of wind chill the skin. In certain areas, hikers have found footprints appearing in sand or dirt where no one else has walked, sometimes leading toward steep drop-offs or inaccessible ledges. Some witnesses claim to hear whispers, sometimes names, sometimes warnings carried faintly on the wind. These occurrences, while subtle, create an atmosphere thick with tension, blending natural danger with supernatural suggestion. The gorge's haunted reputation is not limited to solitary hikers. Kayakers and boaters on the Niagara River have shared stories of seeing shadowy figures on cliff faces from the water, often frozen in place before vanishing entirely. During storms, the river can rise suddenly, swirling with debris and foam, and some report glimpsing forms in the waves, figures that appear to struggle against the current before disappearing beneath the surface. These tales have become part of the local folklore, a reminder that the gorge's power extends beyond its physical hazards and into the realm of the unexplained. Historically, the area has always attracted attention for both beauty and danger. Settlers, traders, and explorers navigating the Niagara River faced harsh conditions, and accidents were common. Over time, stories of those who disappeared or died in the gorge became intertwined with observations of strange lights, sounds, and figures. Some believe that the spirits of the lost cling to the gorge, unable to leave due to the suddenness or violence of their deaths. Others interpret these events as warnings, a way for the natural world to communicate the dangers of underestimating the cliffs, the river, and the shifting terrain. Visiting Niagara Gorge today, even in daylight, carries a sense of awareness that extends beyond its obvious beauty. The cliffs, trails, and river seem to remember. Many hikers report an inexplicable tension, a feeling of being observed or followed. In the evening, the shadows lengthen, the mists rise, and the stories of lost travelers, shadowy climbers, and mysterious sounds take on a new life. Whether one attributes these experiences to imagination, history, or lingering spirits, the effect is profound. The gorge remains a place where the natural and supernatural converge, a landscape shaped by millennia of geological activity and centuries of human tragedy. Shadowy figures, inexplicable sounds, and rising mists continue to haunt those who explore its depths. A reminder that some places are never truly empty. The stories of Niagara Gorge are preserved not just in folklore, but in the physical space itself, etched into cliffs, carried on the river's currents, and whispered in the wind along the trails. For anyone walking the paths at dusk or peering over the edge into the dark waters, the gorge is more than a marvel of nature. It is a living memory, where every step can bring one closer to the edge of both the physical world and the unseen. The Minger Hotel in San Antonio, Texas, has long been famous for its elegance, history, and haunted reputation, but it is not alone in carrying the spectral whispers of luxury. Across Canada, iconic hotels such as Chateau Lake Louise and the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel share similar tale stories of unseen children, phantom staff moving silently through the halls, and guests encountering apparitions in rooms and corridors long after checkout. These buildings, steeped in history, reveal that opulence and comfort often conceal secrets, tragedies, and lingering spirits. Luxury hotels are designed to impress, to provide guests with an escape from the ordinary. But the very grandeur that draws visitors also seems to attract the lingering presence of those who never left. In San Antonio, the Minger Hotel's halls echo with the footsteps of children long gone, their laughter audible in empty ballrooms and suites. Canadian hotels mirror these experiences. At Chateau Lake Louise, guests have reported hearing playful giggles in suites where no one has entered, or the faint sound of a child's footsteps on the polished wooden floors, only to vanish when sought. The Fairmont Banff Springs, with its sweeping staircases and ornate furnishings, has a similar history. Visitors claim to see the ghostly figure of a bride who fell to her death, standing silently on the staircase, while unseen children laugh and run through vacant hallways. In these hotels, phantom staff appear as much as the spectral guests, bellhops, maids, and concierges, dressed in uniforms from decades past, are frequently reported moving quietly through service corridors or disappearing behind closed doors. At the Minger Hotel, some guests have caught glimpses of a porter carefully arranging luggage in a hallway where no employee is on duty. At the Fairmont Banff Springs, visitors and staff alike report encountering figures dressed in early 20th century uniforms, walking through the lobby or arranging furniture, only to vanish when approached. Chateau Lake Louise has its own version's housekeeping staff moving in and out of rooms that remain empty, doors closing softly behind them, as if time itself has looped and trapped these figures in perpetual service. Rooms themselves seem to carry memory and presence. Guests often feel watched, experience cold drafts, or notice furniture shifting without explanation. At the Minger, several suites are infamous for repeated encounters with apparitions. Guests have woken to find beds neatly made, though no one entered, or personal items moved from their original places. In Canadian hotels, similar incidents are reported. A guest at Banff might see the faint outline of a figure standing at the foot of their bed, staring silently at the ceiling before dissolving into thin air. At Chateau Lake Louise, rooms along the lakefront sometimes carry a chill, even in the summer. And objects are mysteriously rearranged overnight, as though a previous occupant has returned to check on their domain. Some apparitions are tied to historical tragedies, and their presence seems to reenact moments from the past. The bride at Banff, whose death has become a central part of the hotel's legend, is often seen pausing mid-staircase, as if unsure whether to descend or retreat. At the Minger, some reports involve soldiers who once lodged at the hotel, now wandering hallways in uniform, their faces etched with melancholy. Chateau Lake Louise hosts tales of early mountaineers and travelers, appearing briefly in corridors or standing silently near windows, gazing out at peaks they never conquered or lakes they never fully saw. Across all these locations, the pattern is striking. Luxury, history, and human tragedy intersect, leaving traces of memory that manifest as ghostly presences. The physical structure of these hotels enhances the spectral experience. Long corridors, polished wood floors, creaking staircases, and expansive ballrooms create spaces that amplify footsteps, whispers, and sounds of movement. The architecture, designed to impress and inspire awe, also allows the past to echo. In the quiet hours of the night, when the lobbies are empty and the halls are still, sounds carry in unexpected ways. A door closing in Banff may sound like a soft slam. A footstep at Chateau Lake Louise may seem to come from the far end of a hallway. At the Minger, empty halls can feel suddenly crowded, as though invisible guests have returned for a midnight gathering. Employees often become intermediaries in these encounters, witnessing phenomena on a daily basis and sharing stories with curious guests. Bellhops, concierges, and housekeepers report sensing presences, hearing whispers, or finding objects arranged inexplicably. In Canada, staff at Chateau Lake Louise and Banff share similar experiences, from lights flickering in empty rooms to the sensation of being followed down a hallway where no one else is present. These accounts are rarely sensationalized. Rather, they are accepted as part of the living history of buildings that have seen generations pass through their doors, lives intertwined with the structure itself. Visitors who experience these haunted moments often leave with a mixture of awe and unease. The luxury and comfort of the hotel are tinged with the realization that the past is not entirely gone. Shadows in hallways, ghostly figures, and laughter from empty rooms remind guests that some histories refuse to fade, and that every corner of these grand hotels is layered with memory and presence. The Minger, Banff, and Chateau Lake Louise all share this unique quality. They are places of hospitality and elegance, yet they hold within them the living echoes of those who came before. Ultimately, these hotels offer more than a stay. They offer a connection to history, to human stories that remain suspended between life and death. Guests may arrive seeking comfort, luxury, or breathtaking scenery, but in these buildings, they also encounter the lingering imprints of the past. The unseen children, phantom staff, and ghostly guests create a narrative that intertwines with the grandeur of the hotels, ensuring that every visit is not only an experience of beauty and comfort, but also a brush with the inexplicable, a reminder that the echoes of history are never truly silent. Fort Steilacoom in Washington has long been notorious for its dark past, but its haunting presence is echoed across Canada, where military forts along the Mackenzie River and elsewhere carry similar stories of restless spirits. These historic fortifications, once bustling with soldiers and activity, are now largely silent, but the echoes of the past refuse to stay buried. Visitors to these sites report eerie footsteps along empty parade grounds, phantom cannon fire rolling across the night, and the distant sounds of battles long ended, as if time itself refuses to move forward within their walls. The forts were originally constructed for protection and control, built in remote and strategic locations to monitor trade routes, enforce law, and guard against potential attacks. In Canada, forts along the Mackenzie River once oversaw fur trading routes and military patrols, isolated outposts amid vast wilderness. Soldiers stationed at these forts endured harsh winters, treacherous conditions, and the constant pressure of defending distant lands. The isolation and danger, combined with the intensity of military life, left deep impressions on those who served and, as local legend suggests, on the land itself. Visitors to these historic forts often describe an uncanny sensation upon arrival. Even in daylight, the structures feel alive with history. Corridors echo with imagined footsteps, and the creak of doors can carry unnaturally far. At night, the atmosphere becomes almost palpable. Many report seeing shadowy figures moving across the grounds, often in uniform, pacing the parade squares or standing silently near old barracks. Some of these apparitions appear to be carrying out tasks as if the fort were still operational, walking from guard towers to mess halls or inspecting equipment that no longer exists. Observers often freeze, unsure whether to approach, and the figures vanish if confronted, leaving only an eerie silence and a lingering sense of being watched. Phantom sounds are another hallmark of these haunted forts. At Fort Steilacoom, people have reported hearing the sudden boom of cannon fire, the clatter of muskets, and the rhythmic marching of soldiers in the dead of night. Along the Mackenzie River, similar phenomena occur. Footsteps across empty courtyards, shouted orders carried on the wind, and the clash of imagined steel echoing against stone walls. These sounds often emerge in complete darkness or fog, making them even more disorienting. Visitors describe the noises as dislocated in time, appearing to replay events from centuries past, yet with a clarity that makes them impossible to ignore. In some cases, the ghosts seem tied to specific individuals or events. Soldiers who died during skirmishes, harsh winters, or accidental misfires are said to return, replaying their final moments. Witnesses recount seeing figures clutching rifles, staring down a line of invisible enemies, or pausing as if aware of some unfinished duty. Some believe that these apparitions are the result of unresolved trauma, a residue of intense human emotion left imprinted on the fortifications themselves. The combination of psychological pressure, isolation, and repeated tragedy seems to have created an enduring haunting, where the past continually overlaps with the present. These haunted fortifications are not limited to combat areas. They extend to everyday life within the walls. Officers' quarters, dining halls, and storage rooms are all reported as sites of paranormal activity. In Canadian forts along the Mackenzie River, visitors have seen shadowy forms moving in and out of rooms that should be empty, doors opening and closing without explanation, and objects shifting on their own. Some guests have even felt a sudden chill, as if a ghostly presence brushed past them while they walked the corridors. These interactions are often fleeting, confirming that these forts are more than historical relics. They are active vessels of memory and spirit. Indigenous legends also intertwine with these military histories, adding layers to the haunting. Some First Nations groups describe spirits associated with the land and waterways near the forts, guardians or watchers whose presence predates the construction of the military sites, in combination with the tragic and intense history of the forts themselves. These local beliefs help explain the persistent sensation of unease that many experience. The forts exist at the intersection of human conflict, environmental isolation, and spiritual narratives, creating a unique atmosphere where history refuses to remain still. Visitors today approach these forts with a mix of curiosity, reverence, and caution. Guided tours often include discussions of hauntings, alongside the architectural and military history, giving people a chance to experience the eerie beauty of these sites. Photographs sometimes capture anomalies, faint shapes in barracks windows, blurred figures on the grounds, or unexplained flashes of light, while skeptics attribute these sightings to shadows, reflections, or imagination. The consistency of reports over decades strengthens the case that these forts are uniquely alive with spectral echoes. Whether exploring Fort Steilacoom or the isolated forts along Canada's Mackenzie River, visitors often come away with a profound sense of the past's persistence. These forts are more than buildings. They are repositories of memory, energy, and emotion. The footsteps of soldiers, the echo of orders, and the occasional spectral cannon fire remind us that history does not always stay buried. In these walls, the living and the dead intersect, and every creaking door or whisper of wind may carry the voice of someone who once called the fort their home. Haunted military forts, both in Washington and across Canada, remain reminders that human history leaves marks far deeper than we often realize. They are places where bravery and tragedy intersect, where echoes of the past are never truly silenced, and where the spirits of soldiers continue to pace the grounds, guarding, remembering, and ensuring that the stories of these remote, stoic fortifications are never forgotten. Along the Atlantic coast, from the rugged shores of Nova Scotia to the windswept beaches of Fundy, the sea holds a power that is both mesmerizing and unnerving. These waters, often calm and beautiful by day, transform at night into a landscape where history and the supernatural intertwine. Tales of drowned spirits, phantom footsteps, and cursed shipwrecks have long haunted these shores, carried on the wind and whispered among local fishermen, lighthouse keepers, and nighttime wanderers. The coastline seems to pulse with memory, a reminder that the ocean keeps secrets that reach far beyond the horizon. Visitors walking along Fundy or Nova Scotia beaches at night often speak of a sudden, inexplicable chill. The sand beneath their feet seems to carry a weight beyond its grains, as though each footprint touches more than just earth. Some report hearing the soft echo of steps that do not match their own. Phantom footsteps tracing their path along the shoreline. The sound is distinct yet impossible to locate, rising and falling with the rhythm of the waves. In many cases, the footsteps accelerate as the observer pauses, as if the unseen presence is both aware and curious, following but never threatening directly. The waters themselves hold their own haunting stories. Storms sweep in without warning, transforming calm tides into violent surges that have claimed countless ships over centuries. Among the wrecks are tales of cursed vessels, doomed from the moment they touched these Atlantic waters. Sailors speak of spectral figures climbing aboard their decks during foggy nights, shadows that vanish when approached. Some insist that the spirits are the remnants of crews lost to storms, eternally bound to the shipwrecks they never escaped. In Nova Scotia, particularly near Bay of Fundy Coves, the wrecks of centuries-old fishing vessels have become focal points for sightings of ghostly sailors carrying lanterns, their faces pale and hollow, silently navigating decks that no longer exist above water. These spectral figures are not always malevolent, but their presence is unsettling. Locals tell of the drowned, individuals claimed by the sea, who return to the shore as if drawn by some invisible tether. Often, these apparitions appear at dusk or during storms, when mists rise from the water and obscure the landscape. In the fog, the figures are indistinctly blurred, hair plastered to pale faces, clothing hanging in waterlogged tatters. Yet their presence is unmistakable. They move slowly along the shoreline, sometimes pausing to stare at those who wander too close, sometimes vanishing entirely when approached. Witnesses describe a sense of profound sorrow radiating from the figures, a palpable grief rooted in the finality of their watery deaths. The beaches themselves seem to participate in these encounters. Driftwood and seaweed are often found rearranged in patterns that suggest deliberate movement, even when no one else is present. Footprints occasionally appear in wet sand that do not match the shoes or bare feet of the visitor. At night, some hikers have felt a cold hand brush against their ankle, a sensation that vanishes as quickly as it appeared. Others report hearing whispers just beyond comprehension, voices carried on the wind from the waves, murmuring warnings or stories too faint to understand. The combination of natural phenomena, fog, tides, and sudden storms creates the perfect conditions for the uncanny, where reality and the spectral overlap in ways both subtle and intense. Cursed shipwrecks are central to the coastal mythology. Many vessels ran aground on hidden rocks or were capsized by sudden storms, leaving entire crews lost to the ocean. In local lore, the spirits of these sailors linger, bound to the locations where their lives ended. In Nova Scotia, fishermen have long avoided certain coves at night, claiming that the water is hot with spirits, restless and watching. Those who have dared to linger report glimpsing figures in tattered coats and hats, clutching rigging or lanterns, silently pacing the deck before dissolving into the fog. The spirits sometimes appear to interact with the living, causing instruments to malfunction, lights to flicker, or compasses to spin without cause. The haunted atmosphere of these Atlantic beaches is further amplified by sudden mists that descend without warning. Hikers, joggers, and fishermen describe the fog rising from the water like a living wall, thick enough to obscure the horizon and distort sound. Within this mist, figures can appear, vanish, or drift like phantoms along the shoreline. Some claim to have seen shadows of people walking on the surface of the water itself, just beyond where the waves break. The uncanny effect is disorienting, creating a liminal space where the ordinary rules of nature seem suspended, and where past tragedies replay in spectral form. For those who experience these coastal hauntings, the effect is lasting. The beaches, with their high tides, rocky outcrops, and hidden coves, leave an impression that is equal parts awe-inspiring and unsettling. Visitors speak of returning long after nightfall, compelled to look again at the water, at the mists, at the shapes that appear and vanish. Whether the sightings are manifestations of memory, echoes of tragedy, or spirits caught between worlds, the Atlantic coast holds a sense of presence that is impossible to ignore. From the Bay of Fundy to Nova Scotia shores, the Atlantic coastline in Canada remains a place where the living brush against the past. Phantom footsteps, drowned spirits, and spectral shipwrecks remind us that the ocean does not forget. Each wave, each mist, and each gust of wind carries echoes of those who are claimed by the sea, and for those walking the sand after dark. The boundary between the present and the otherworldly feels impossibly thin. The Atlantic coast is a place of beauty, danger, and lingering memory. A reminder that history and the supernatural often meet where land and water collide. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia stands as a chilling reminder of a past steeped in sorrow, suffering, and mystery. Its abandoned corridors, silent wards, and crumbling walls evoke an unsettling atmosphere that visitors cannot ignore. Across Canada, abandoned hospitals and asylums in Ontario and Quebec carry similar reputations. These sprawling institutions, once centers of treatment and confinement, are now largely empty, yet the energy of their former inhabitants lingers in ways both subtle and terrifying. Visitors report footsteps echoing in hallways where no one walks, cold touches brushing against their skin, and shadowy figures moving silently through rooms and stairwells, as if the past refuses to let go. Asylums were designed to contain, heal, and observe. In both the United States and Canada, these facilities were often massive, imposing structures built to house hundreds of patients. Many endured harsh treatments, strict routines, and the isolation of institutional life. Over decades, countless lives were spent within these walls, some ending peacefully, others tragically. It is the accumulation of human emotion, fear, and despair that many believe contributes to the lingering energy now reported in abandoned wings and neglected hallways. Visitors often comment that stepping inside these old asylums feels like crossing a threshold into a space where time itself has slowed, where echoes of the past are embedded in the walls and floors. Footsteps are among the most common phenomena reported. Guests exploring the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum describe hearing steps behind them in long, empty corridors, only to find no one there when they turn. The sound may pause, begin again, or even follow them from room to room. In Canadian asylums, similar reports persist. Empty hallways in Ontario and Quebec facilities reverberate with the echo of someone pacing, moving with deliberate purpose, yet entirely invisible. Some believe these are the footsteps of former patients, still trapped in the routines and motions of their former lives. Others think they may be the residual echoes of staff performing nightly duties, recorded in the energy of the building, replaying endlessly in spectral loops. Cold touches and sudden drops in temperature are also frequently experienced. Visitors report feeling a hand graze their shoulder, an icy breath on their neck, or a sharp chill that seems localized to a single spot in a room. These sensations often precede sightings of shadowy forms, moving just beyond the corner of vision, vanishing when directly observed. In Canadian abandoned hospitals, guests have described the same phenomenon: a sudden sensation of pressure or cold, followed by the fleeting glimpse of a figure in a patient gown or a nurse's uniform, moving silently through the space. The combination of touch, temperature, and visual cues creates an immersive haunting that affects both body and mind, leaving witnesses with a lingering sense of unease. Long after they leave, shadowy figures are perhaps the most unnerving aspect of these haunted asylums. At the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, visitors have reported dark silhouettes gliding past open doorways, lingering at the tops of stairwells, or vanishing behind walls. Some figures appear to be watching, their presence palpable, even without physical interaction. Canadian facilities mirror these accounts. Guests exploring empty wings of abandoned asylums describe fleeting shadows that seem to move with intention, sometimes following them, sometimes pausing to observe. In some cases, the figures appear fully formed, while in others, they are indistinct, more like impressions of a person captured in fading light. The experience is disorienting, creating the impression that the buildings themselves are aware of intruders, responding in ways that defy explanation. Other phenomena include the movement of objects, unexplained noises, and faint whispers. Doors may slam shut on their own, lights flicker, or objects shift slightly from their original positions. Some visitors report hearing faint voices, calling out names, or repeating phrases, often indecipherable but unmistakably human. In Canadian abandoned hospitals, the same patterns emerge. Personal items, medical equipment, or furniture are sometimes found in unusual arrangements, as if someone or something is interacting with the environment. Whispers echo in empty wards, and faint knocks or taps seem to respond to the presence of a living person. These occurrences, while subtle, contribute to a pervasive sense that the buildings themselves are alive with memory and energy. The architecture of these asylums amplifies the haunting. Long corridors, high ceilings, and expansive wards create natural acoustics that carry sound unnaturally far. Darkened stairwells, narrow service corridors, and abandoned rooms provide spaces for shadows to move unseen. In Canada, the imposing facades of old hospitals and asylums, often built of brick and stone, give way to sprawling interiors that are labyrinthine and disorienting. Exploring these structures, especially at night or in dim light, heightens the sensation of being observed, followed, or surrounded by unseen presences. For those who venture into these abandoned asylums, the experience is rarely casual. Many report an overwhelming sense of the past pressing against the present, a mixture of fear, fascination, and reverence. The echoes of human life, of suffering, care, and tragedy, seem to saturate the air, leaving visitors aware that these places are more than just empty buildings. They are vessels of memory, haunted by the people who once lived, worked, and died within their walls. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum and its Canadian equivalents serve as reminders that history leaves traces far deeper than architecture or written records. Footsteps, shadows, cold touches, and whispers are more than simple tricks of the mind. They are evidence of lingering energy, of lives that cannot fully depart. For those exploring abandoned asylums in Ontario, Quebec, or West Virginia, every step along the creaking floors, every glance down a darkened corridor, is a brush with the past. A moment where the boundary between the living and the dead feels impossibly thin. Isolated islands and remote lakes have long been places where nature and mystery intertwine, and few are as haunting as South Manitou Island in Michigan. Its rocky shores, dense forests, and abandoned settlements create an atmosphere both beautiful and unsettling. In Canada, similar islands in Ontario's lakes, particularly around Lake Superior and the more remote areas of the north, carry the same eerie reputation. Visitors report ghostly figures walking along the shoreline, lanterns moving across the water, and whispers carried on the wind, as if the islands themselves are alive with memories of those who once lived there and those who never left. South Manitou Island has a history marked by isolation and tragedy. Once a bustling site for lighthouses, shipping operations, and small communities, it now sits largely abandoned, reclaimed by nature. Buildings crumble, paths grow over with grass, and trees stretch across old roads, yet traces of the past linger. Walkers along the beaches and hikers on overgrown trails often feel a strange presence, as if the island remembers every person who has passed through it. Local lore tells of sailors lost at sea, children who died young, and settlers who vanished, leaving behind only echoes. Visitors often speak of stepping onto the sand and sensing unseen eyes, watching, or glimpsing a figure standing at the tree line that disappears when looked at directly. The water surrounding the island seems equally alive. At night, strange lights are frequently reported skimming across the waves. Some say these are lanterns of long-dead fishermen, still tending to tasks they performed in life. Others claim they are spirits guiding lost travelers toward safety or perhaps leading them into danger. Witnesses describe the lights moving in patterns that defy logic, rising and falling as if floating, then vanishing without a trace. Canoeists, kayakers, and even those standing on shorelines have felt an inexplicable pull toward these lights, a sensation that is equal parts thrilling and terrifying. Ghostly figures are among the most persistent phenomena. Walkers along the beaches at dusk sometimes see individuals dressed in clothing from centuries past, wandering aimlessly along the shore. Sailors, settlers, or children, their faces are indistinct, but their forms are unmistakably human. When approached, these figures vanish, leaving only footprints in the sand or faint impressions on the earth. Some visitors have even reported multiple figures appearing simultaneously, moving in silence along paths or standing motionless in fields. The presence is palpable, heavy with the weight of stories long forgotten, and often leaves those who witness it with a profound sense of awe and unease. Sounds also add to the island's eerie reputation. In the stillness of the night, the crash of waves mixes with whispers that seem almost intelligible, carried faintly on the wind. Some hikers report hearing children laughing or footsteps crunching along trails that are empty. Occasionally, the distant clang of metal or the creak of wooden structures echoes across the island. Even in places long abandoned, these auditory experiences, combined with sudden drops in temperature or localized chills, create an atmosphere that feels supernatural, as if the island itself communicates with anyone brave enough or unfortunate enough to be present. The isolation of South Manitou Island amplifies these phenomena. Removed from the distractions of modern life, the mind is attuned to subtle changes in sound, movement, and light. The forests and shorelines create a natural stage for the uncanny, where shadows play tricks on the eyes and the imagination fills in gaps. Canadian islands in Ontario, particularly in Lake Superior and remote northern lakes, share these qualities. Visitors often find themselves walking along beaches with no other footprints, seeing lights flicker across water where no boat exists, or encountering shadowy figures near abandoned cabins or lighthouses. The isolation allows the past to press more insistently against the present, making every step feel precarious and every sound amplified. Many of the ghostly stories are tied to the island's maritime history. Ships navigating the often treacherous waters of Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes sometimes vanished, leaving crews lost to storms or hidden shoals. In Ontario, shipwrecks dot the lake bottoms, and similar stories persist on islands and remote shorelines. On both sides of the border, the lights seen moving across the water are often interpreted as the lanterns of lost sailors, wandering the lakes in an eternal search for home or attempting to guide others through the same dangers that claimed them. Buildings, though abandoned, hold their own haunting energy. Old lighthouse towers, crumbling cabins, and storage sheds are said to harbor shadows of past occupants. Visitors have reported objects moving slightly, doors opening on their own, or a sense of being observed within the structures. Some even describe the feeling of a hand brushing past them in hallways or the sensation of a presence standing nearby when no one else is around. These subtle interactions enhance the impression that the island is alive, populated by echoes of those who once called it home. For those who visit South Manitou Island or its Canadian counterparts, the experience is unforgettable. The beauty of the landscape's rocky shores, towering trees, and clear waters is contrasted sharply with an ever-present sense of the uncanny. Ghostly figures, moving lights, and unexplained sounds create a haunting tapestry, blurring the line between history and the supernatural. Walking along a deserted beach at dusk, watching mist roll over the water, or climbing a worn trail through the forest, visitors often feel as if the past is walking alongside them, invisible yet undeniably present. South Manitou Island and remote Canadian islands remind us that nature preserves memory. Shorelines, forests, and lakes can hold echoes of lives once lived, tragedies once endured, and mysteries never solved. Lights across the water, ghostly figures along the beaches, and whispers carried by the wind all serve as reminders that these isolated places are more than scenic escapes. They are living monuments to the past, where the boundary between the living and the departed feels fragile and permeable. The islands invite exploration, wonder, and respect, offering a glimpse into a world where beauty and the supernatural coexist, and where the echoes of history are never truly silent. Historic buildings across Canada, much like the First Bank of the United States in Philadelphia, are not merely monuments of stone and brick. They are vessels of memory, carrying echoes of the people and events that passed through their walls. Old banks, fortresses, and administrative buildings in Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes have long attracted stories of haunting, where the living occasionally cross paths with lingering spirits of the past. Visitors, historians, and employees alike report fleeting apparitions, strange noises, and an unsettling feeling that the air itself retains the weight of bygone eras. One of the most commonly reported phenomena in these historic sites involves spectral bank tellers and customers in buildings that have housed financial transactions for centuries. Visitors have described seeing figures in period clothing moving behind counters or through lobbies. Some appear to be conducting business, counting coins, or exchanging papers, only to vanish when approached. Witnesses often remark that these figures are not merely shadows. They seem to possess the deliberate motion and presence of someone still performing their duties, repeating actions ingrained by decades of routine. In some cases, former employees have even felt a sense of supervision or unseen observation, as if the ghosts of past clerks continue to monitor the space. Vaults and storage areas are particularly charged with eerie activity. In Canadian historic banks, vaults were often heavily secured, their thick walls containing not only valuables but the energies of those who worked long hours within them. Visitors have reported sudden drops in temperature near these vaults, along with the faint metallic clinking of coins or the soft rustle of paper, even when the areas are empty. Some claim to see fleeting movements behind reinforced doors or the shadow of a figure disappearing just as the light shifts. These occurrences are often accompanied by the sense of being watched, as though the building remembers every transaction, every exchange of wealth and trust. Stairwells and upper floors are another common sight of apparitions. In many old Canadian banks and fortresses, steep wooden or stone staircases creak underfoot even when no one is present, and faint footsteps echo in patterns that do not match any living person's movements. Guests and employees alike have reported glimpses of figures ascending or descending the stairs, sometimes in clothing from another century, and occasionally vanishing into the walls or thin air. The combination of echoing footsteps, shadowy movements, and the silent emptiness of upper floors creates an atmosphere where the past feels vividly close, almost as if it occupies the same plane as the present. The architecture itself seems to amplify the haunting. High ceilings, narrow hallways, and stone walls allow sounds to travel in unusual ways, giving ordinary creaks, groans, or drafts an almost supernatural quality. In some buildings, sudden gusts of wind sweep through corridors with no apparent source. Doors swing slowly open or shut, and chandeliers or light fixtures shift slightly without explanation. Witnesses often describe these movements as deliberate, as though the building interacts with them, and some interpret these as attempts by spirits to communicate or reenact past events. Stories also include fleeting apparitions in the main banking halls. Visitors sometimes glimpse shadowy figures moving among the desks, disappearing as quickly as they appear. Some of these figures appear fully formed, while others are only partially visible, as if caught between this world and the next. Occasionally, the figures seem to notice observers, pausing or turning toward them before vanishing. Such experiences leave an impression that the building itself is alive with memory, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is thin and permeable. Haunted energy often seems tied to dramatic moments in history. Many historic banks and fortresses witness periods of economic upheaval, protests, or even violent events such as robberies and confrontations. In some Canadian buildings, ghosts are believed to be linked to those who suffered during financial crises, labor disputes, or misfortune while working in these institutions. These energies manifest subtly through sensations, sounds, and apparitions, suggesting that intense emotions, once experienced, leave traces that endure far beyond a person's lifetime. Visitors frequently describe a mix of curiosity and unease. Walking through lobbies or corridors, one might feel an invisible gaze, sense sudden temperature changes, or hear unexplained noises. Even in the bright light of day, shadowy movements are noticed at the edge of vision, only to disappear when focused upon. At night, the atmosphere can grow thick with anticipation, as if the building itself is holding its breath. Guests often report that the more they explore, the more vivid the presence becomes, and by the time they leave, they feel that the past has accompanied them, lingering just beyond perception. These experiences are not confined to a single location. Across Ontario, Quebec, and other provinces, old banks and fortresses share similar stories. Some were central to the early economic development of towns and cities, while others served as fortified points during periods of unrest. In each case, visitors report echoes of human activity that continue to resonate in the hallways, vaults, and offices. Shadowy figures, metallic sounds, cold drafts, and sudden feelings of presence suggest that the energy of the past remains embedded within the architecture, a living memory etched into stone, wood, and metal. Historic banks and fortresses in Canada serve as reminders that buildings are more than physical structures. They are repositories of human experience. The footsteps that echo along stairwells, the glances of ghostly clerks, and the fleeting shadows in vaults and hallways all tell stories of the people who lived, worked, and sometimes died within these walls. Visitors to these sites often leave with a sense of awe and unease, knowing that the past is not gone. It is layered over the present, waiting to be perceived, remembered, and respected. Historic mansions across Canada, much like the famed Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana, are more than architectural marvels. They are repositories of memory, steeped in centuries of human drama, joy, sorrow, and tragedy. From Ontario to Quebec and the Maritimes, old estates and stately homes hold stories of families long gone, servants who labored within their walls, and the many lives that intersected with these grand residences. Yet beyond their beauty, these homes often carry an unsettling presence, one that manifests in subtle and sometimes unmistakable ways. Guests, caretakers, and historians have reported disembodied voices echoing through empty halls, cold drafts appearing where no windows are open, and objects moving without explanation. These experiences suggest that the spirit of the past lingers, refusing to be confined to memory alone. Walking through the front doors of these estates, visitors often feel an immediate shift in the atmosphere. The air, heavy with the scent of old wood, polished stone, and faded wallpaper, seems to carry a weight that goes beyond the physical. Some describe a chill that lingers in certain rooms, far colder than the surrounding temperature, often accompanied by the sensation of being observed. Footsteps echo faintly along long hallways when no one is present, and the soft creak of floorboards sometimes follows the cadence of a phantom presence. These subtle signs build a growing awareness that the house itself holds a consciousness shaped by its history. Disembodied voices are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Guests have claimed to hear whispered conversations, faint laughter, or sudden exclamations that seem to come from nowhere. In some cases, voices speak directly to visitors, repeating names or issuing brief commands. Yet, when the source is sought, nothing is found. These auditory experiences often occur in rooms that were once heavily occupied or central to household life, ballrooms, kitchens, or sitting rooms where generations of residents lived and interacted. The voices are sometimes friendly or neutral, but in other instances, they carry a note of warning or melancholy, as if the house remembers past sorrows. Cold drafts and sudden changes in temperature add another layer of eerie presence. In some mansions, entire rooms feel frozen in contrast to the warmth of surrounding spaces, and objects near these zones may be affected. Candles flicker without wind, doors swing slowly open or shut, and mirrors sometimes reflect shadows that do not belong to anyone in the room. Visitors have described walking through a corridor only to feel a distinct chill brush past them, accompanied by a sensation of being followed or accompanied. These physical manifestations create a tangible link between the living and the lingering spirits, emphasizing that the boundaries between past and present are fragile within these historic walls. Objects moving inexplicably are another hallmark of haunted mansions. Chairs may shift slightly, books fall from shelves, or delicate ornaments tumble from tables without explanation. In some cases, these movements seem deliberate, as though the house itself is communicating, guiding, or reacting to those who enter. Guests have reported seeing doors open to reveal rooms they had previously passed by, or finding personal items rearranged in ways that defy logic. In certain estates, the repetition of these phenomena in the same spaces over decades has given rise to legends about particular spirits inhabiting specific rooms or objects, creating a layered narrative of haunting that spans generations. Many of these mansions were the sites of intense emotion, including wealth and celebration, but also tragedy and loss. Families who lived within their walls experienced deaths, illnesses, and sudden accidents, and it is often these moments that are believed to leave a lasting imprint. Servants and workers who toiled within the estates may also have contributed to the lingering energy, their presence woven into the routines and rhythms of daily life. When visitors encounter ghostly phenomena, they are, in a sense, walking through the emotional residue of countless past lives, each echoing in the architecture of the home. The Canadian equivalents of Myrtle's plantation grand estates along the shores of Ontario lakes, old stone mansions in Quebec, and historic homes in the Maritimes share similar tales. Caretakers of these properties often recount instances of shadowy figures seen from peripheral vision, footsteps in empty rooms, and fleeting glimpses of people dressed in historical attire. Some of the most persistent legends involve children, whose laughter or crying can be heard echoing through hallways long after they have grown and passed away. Others speak of apparitions of former owners appearing in parlors or libraries, lingering to observe their former homes and perhaps their descendants. Even outside the grand rooms, the grounds of these estates carry an uncanny presence. Gardens, pathways, and outbuildings are sometimes the stage for ghostly sightings, figures walking along tree-lined avenues, lanterns moving in abandoned sheds, or unexplained rustling in otherwise still shrubs. Visitors walking the property at dusk often report a heightened awareness, as if the estate itself is attuned to their presence. Some claim to hear the distant clatter of carriages or the murmur of conversations that existed centuries ago. The combination of landscape and architecture enhances the feeling that the house and its surroundings are alive with memory. For those who spend time in these historic mansions, the experiences leave a lasting impression. The line between history and the supernatural feels permeable, and each creak whisper or fleeting shadow serves as a reminder that the past is never truly gone. These estates, preserved for their cultural and architectural significance, are also repositories of human emotion and energy. connecting the living with echoes of lives that shaped the buildings over generations. Visitors leave with more than an appreciation for beauty. They carry a sense of having brushed against the intangible, the lingering spirits that continue to inhabit these storied walls. Historic estates in Canada, like Myrtle's plantation in Louisiana, demonstrate that beauty and haunting are often intertwined. Disembodied voices, cold drafts, and moving objects serve as a bridge across time, reminding visitors that these grand homes are living histories in more ways than one. Each hallway, parlor, and corridor carry stories of joy, sorrow, and loss, preserved in the very structure of the building. Those who enter may never see the spirits with clarity, but the sense of presence is undeniable. Walking through these estates, one feels the weight of history and the gentle insistence that the past is never fully gone. It lingers, quietly observing, waiting, and whispering. Grand estates and castles along Canada's lakesides, much like Bolt Castle in New York, carry an elegance that is both breathtaking and eerie. Hatley Castle in British Columbia, along with historic estates in Ontario and Quebec, share similar reputations, where the walls are said to hold memories of the people who once lived, worked, and passed away within them. Visitors often speak of ghostly presences, apparitions wandering empty corridors, fleeting shadows glimpsed from the corner of an eye, and unexplained sounds echoing through grand halls. These estates are more than architectural marvels. They are living witnesses to history, and sometimes to the spirits that linger long after human life has moved on. Bolt Castle's history adds to its spectral allure. Construction was abruptly halted when George Bolt's wife, Louise, died unexpectedly, leaving the grandiose estate incomplete. The sudden cessation of life and ambition seems to have left a lingering impression, a quiet tension frozen in stone and timber. Similarly, Hatley Castle and other Canadian estates often bear the marks of sudden change or tragedy, families departing, estates abandoned, or historical events leaving scars on the land. Visitors to these sites often describe an immediate sense of unease, a feeling that the past is present in ways that go beyond the visible architecture. Apparitions are the most frequently reported phenomena. Figures in period attire are sometimes seen pacing the hallways, standing silently by windows, or moving along staircases, vanishing when approached. Shadows flicker along corridors, as if repeating routines from centuries ago. Some guests and staff claim that they feel observed even in empty rooms, a persistent awareness that someone or something is watching their every step. These presences are often described as neither threatening nor malevolent, yet the sensation they produce is undeniable, a reminder that the history of these estates continues to resonate. Unexplained sounds further reinforce the feeling of lingering life. Visitors have heard footsteps echoing along empty halls, the distant clatter of silverware in abandoned dining rooms, and the soft murmur of voices when no one is present. Doors creak open or close on their own, and furniture sometimes shifts inexplicably. In Hatley Castle, certain rooms are particularly active, with sounds of movement and faint whispers recurring in the same areas over time. These auditory phenomena create a sense that the estates are not simply static relics, but spaces where past and present coexist. Staircases in grand halls are often the focal points of ghostly activity. Guests report seeing figures ascending or descending the sweeping staircases in elegant attire, accompanied by sudden drops in temperature or fleeting chills. Some describe being drawn toward specific rooms or corridors, a sensation that seems to guide them to areas imbued with residual energy. In many Canadian estates, the combination of architecture and lingering presence amplifies the eerie sensation, making even the most mundane journey through the castle feel charged with history. The grounds of these estates are equally alive with stories. Gardens, terraces, and lake shores have hosted shadowy figures, flickering lanterns, or glimpses of former residents moving through trees and along paths. Visitors at dusk often sense a heightened awareness, as if the estate itself is observing them. Some have reported hearing the faint sound of carriages, distant laughter, or conversations that seem tied to moments long past. The interplay of landscape, architecture, and lingering presence creates an atmosphere where time feels suspended and the past seems just beyond reach. Emotional weight is another element of these hauntings. Visitors often experience inexplicable nostalgia, melancholy, or unease, sensations tied to the history and tragedies that unfolded within the estate. The knowledge of sudden deaths, family losses, or abandoned construction adds a subtle tension, as if the castle itself carries the emotional residue of lives once lived within its walls. Even without direct sightings, these feelings create a palpable link to the past. Ultimately, Canadian lakeside estates like Hatley Castle, much like Bolt Castle, are more than historical landmarks. They are repositories of memory and energy. The apparitions, mysterious sounds, and fleeting shadows provide a bridge between the living and the dead, reminding visitors that history is alive in subtle and startling ways. Guests leave with a sense that the estates continue to watch, quietly preserving the stories of those who came before, and ensuring that the past is never truly gone. Across Canada, historic ruins and abandoned forts, such as Fort York in Ontario, Fort Chambly in Quebec, and other neglected military sites evoke a sense of history steeped in conflict, ambition, and mystery. Much like the infamous Bangalore Fort in India, these structures are not only relics of the past, but also vessels for stories of lingering spirits, curses, and unexplained phenomena. Visitors often report feelings of unease as soon as they enter these grounds, as though the fortifications themselves remember the lives and tragedies that unfolded within their walls. Walking among the crumbling walls of Fort York, for example, the weight of history becomes tangible. The stone and brick, worn by centuries of weather and human activity, seem to hum with residual energy. It is common for visitors to sense sudden drops in temperature, or to feel as if invisible eyes are watching from the battlements. In some areas, especially along former guard posts and parapets, shadowy figures have been glimpsed, often appearing fully formed and wearing period military attire. These apparitions sometimes pace the walls methodically, repeating routines that may have been part of their duties hundreds of years ago. Strange lights are another hallmark of these haunted forts. In some Canadian ruins, especially during twilight or foggy nights, observers report faint glows moving among the decaying walls. These lights are often described as flickering or pulsing, appearing to trace the paths of old corridors or patrol routes. Some claim to see the lights vanish when approached, only to reappear elsewhere, giving the impression that the spirits of long-departed soldiers are still roaming the grounds, keeping watch over a fortress that has long since lost its strategic importance. Echoes of past battles and daily life sometimes manifest audibly. Visitors describe hearing the faint clatter of swords against armor, the distant barking of orders, or the rhythmic march of troops along empty courtyards. In areas that were once used for training or storage, the sounds of footsteps that echo in patterns impossible for any present visitor to produce, are frequently reported. Some say these auditory phenomena are echoes of the fort's operational days, repeating in a loop through the stone corridors, as if the past is replaying itself for those who are willing to listen. Overgrown grounds contribute to the eerie atmosphere. Canadian ruins often lie surrounded by dense vegetation, moss-covered walls, and crumbling stone paths. In these areas, shadows are seen moving among the trees and bushes, sometimes following visitors before vanishing when directly approached. Some visitors report hearing whispers carried by the wind through the ruins, voices that seem to speak in languages long abandoned or echo the commands of officers from another era. The combination of wild nature, reclaiming human constructions, and the lingering human presence creates a liminal space where reality feels suspended. Abandoned living quarters and storage buildings often have particularly strong haunting activity. Former barracks, officers' quarters, and supply rooms are the sites of footsteps, cold spots, and sometimes the fleeting appearance of ghostly figures handling tools, weapons, or belongings as if performing their duties long after death. Some explorers have reported seeing spectral silhouettes at windows, peering out at the surrounding landscape, their expressions obscured, yet undeniably human. These interactions, though brief, leave a profound impression that the past is never truly gone, but layered atop the present, always just out of full perception. Legends and local stories enhance the mysterious aura of these forts. Tales of curses, abandoned treasures, and vengeful spirits are common. In some cases, the narrative of a tragic death or betrayal within the walls gives rise to ongoing reports of supernatural activity. Witnesses sometimes feel a pressure in the air, a sense of being warned or observed by forces beyond comprehension. In others, playful or curious spirits are reported, moving objects slightly, tugging at clothing, or making noises to alert visitors to their presence. These stories blend with the historical significance of the forts, creating a tapestry of fact and folklore that lingers in the imagination as strongly as any visible ruin. Visitors often describe a powerful mix of awe and apprehension when exploring these historic ruins. The architecture, even in decay, conveys strength, authority, and the labor of countless individuals over generations. Yet the presence of unseen watchers, strange sounds, and inexplicable lights reminds them that human history is not simply recorded in documents or stone. It can be felt, perceived, and sometimes encountered directly. The ruins themselves become active participants in this continuum, bearing witness to centuries of human activity and carrying residual energy that interacts with those who walk their grounds. For many, the haunting experience is not terrifying in a cinematic sense, but deeply unsettling in a subtle, psychological way. The knowledge that these walls have seen violence, duty, and death imprints itself upon the visitor. The cold drafts in empty corridors, the soft flicker of lights across stone, the fleeting shadows all create a sensation that the fort is alive with memory, as if time itself has pooled in the ruins, leaving impressions that cannot be erased. Canadian forts, whether on islands, riverbanks, or inland sites, illustrate that abandonment does not erase human influence. The walls and grounds retain the echoes of those who lived, worked, and sometimes died within them. Apparitions, strange lights, ghostly footsteps, and whispering voices serve as reminders that history is not simply past. It continues to interact with the present in ways that are sometimes visible, often sensed, and always deeply resonant. For visitors willing to look, listen, and feel, these ruins offer a rare opportunity to engage with history, not only intellectually, but viscerally, through the lingering presence of lives long concluded, yet never fully gone. In the end, Canadian historic ruins and forts are living monuments to both human achievement and the mysteries of the unseen. They are places where stone, wood, and earth meet memory and spirit, where echoes of the past continue to manifest in subtle and startling ways. Much like Bangalore Fort in India, these sites remind us that history is alive, layered, and occasionally, just beyond the edge of perception, waiting to be witnessed. And there you have it, 25 of Canada's most haunted locations, each with a story to chill, fascinate, and linger in your mind. From towering mountain resorts to misty coastal cliffs, from abandoned estates to the endless prairies, these places hold echoes of lives long past, tragedies never forgotten, and mysteries that refuse to die. If you ever travel these lands, take a moment to pause, look around, and listen carefully. Perhaps, just perhaps, you'll catch a glimpse of the unseen, feel a chill from a lingering spirit, or hear a whisper carried by the wind. The past is never truly gone here. It waits, patient and watchful, for those willing to notice. Thank you for joining me on this journey into Canada's shadows. Keep your lantern close, your senses sharp, and remember, sometimes the dead are closer than they appear.